Chapter 247. Anlin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou were all dumbstruck. Never would they have thought that such a masochistic summer bird would be conquered by Su Xiaolan. Where was the three of them going to put their faces? They really wanted to bang their heads against a wall. Summer bird flew in front of Su Xiaolan and breathed out a golden flame seed from its beak. Close your eyes and focus. Su Xiaolan did as she was told, and the golden flame seed began to merge into her glabella. Boom! The vital energy of heaven and earth suddenly surged. Is it my imagination? I feel like Su Xiaolan's aura has become more powerful, Anlin said as he looked at the slightly furrowed woman. I feel it too. Could it be that accepting an inheritance can increase one's cultivation base? Woof! Dabai was also confused. Summer Bird chuckled. This is because she had an epiphany when accepting the inheritance. She took advantage of this opportunity to cleanse and purify the power of flames in her body, thereby making her flames even purer. To be able to grasp this opportunity so decisively, she really is very talented in the Tao of flames. Right at this moment, wisps of flames suddenly began to revolve around Su Xiaolan's body. These flames were yellow with a hint of gold, and they exuded an extremely scorching aura. She opened her eyes with an excited expression on her face. I did it. Summer Bird nodded. The inheritance is over, so it's time for me to leave. We'll meet again. When we meet again, I hope you guys can put in more effort, hee. After saying this, she spread open her wings, and her body rose into the air as she flew toward the gate of the dragon tomb. Anlin, Dabai and Xiao Chou returned to their miniature forms, and they were extremely disappointed. If they could, they wanted to turn into a blade of grass. All right, let's go to the other palace, Su Xiaolan said excitedly. Only Su Xiaolan was in high spirits now. The two extremely helpful inheritances had completely stimulated her adventurous spirit. The third palace was called the Palace of Autumn. Anlin and the others nervously pushed open the door and saw a young girl sitting quietly on a straw mat. She had a pretty face and a fiery red dress. An ancient sword rested on her slender legs as she closed her eyes and meditated. Anlin looked at this young lady and felt that she was very cool. She had the demeanor of a master. Facing this kind of master, no one could disturb her. This was a great disrespect. The best way to deal with it was to quietly stand to the side and wait for Grandmaster to find some time. Su Xiaolan was clearly thinking the same thing. She stood silently off to the side with Anlin and looked at the young woman with a hint of excitement and anticipation. Time passed slowly. Anlin felt that this test might be a test of their patience. Therefore, he did not make any unnecessary movement. Unknowingly, a long time passed. The red-clothed girl's body gently moved up and down, her head slightly tilted to one side. Sparkling and translucent liquid flowed out from the corner of her delicate mouth. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, is she asleep? Anlin transmitted his voice. I think so. She's drooling. Have you ever seen someone drool while meditating? Su Xiaolan transmitted her voice back. Then let's go wake her up, Anlin continued. Won't she get angry if we wake her up so abruptly? Then the inheritance will be ruined. Su Xiaolan was a little worried. Anlin nodded and felt that it made sense. Therefore, he threw Minnie White out. Go, Dabai. Woof. Why me? Dabai, who had not recovered from the trauma, wailed. Then, his dog face crashed into the young girl's face. Bam. Dabai crashed into the young girl and sent her tumbling backward. Su Xiaolan. Anlin's eyes widened. He felt that he had thrown too much, but it was really not intentional. He just did not expect Dabai to be so light. Who? Wow. A dog? The young girl in red was knocked down and screamed in fright. Then, she saw Dabai's adorable dog face. She looked up and saw Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and an ugly, adorable monkey. Her expression changed instantly, and a sharp aura began to burst out. Her entire body was like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed. Fated one, welcome to the Palace of Autumn. Do you want to obtain the Winter Dragon Tomb's sword inheritance? Her voice was crisp and pleasant, but it contained a frightening sharpness that made people shiver. Unlin was delighted when he heard this. Sword inheritance? I, Unlin Sword Immortal, will definitely obtain this inheritance. He had already comprehended the 6 strikes of the war god. How difficult would it be to obtain the Palace of Autumn's sword inheritance? Unlin felt that he could not raise his head after being consecutively obtained by Su Xiaolan. Now that he was finally in a field that he was good at, he would be letting himself down if he did not show off a little. The method to obtain the sword inheritance this time is relatively simple. Watch my sword dance once. After you watch it, follow your own comprehension and restore my sword dance. I will see if you are qualified to obtain my inheritance, the young girl said in a clear voice. Unlin nodded excitedly. Okay, Senior Autumn Girl. I don't think I introduced my name. How did you know? The young girl in red's beautiful eyes lit up, and a curious expression appeared on her face. Unlin thought, based on Spring Man and Summer Bird's character, as long as they are not stupid, they can deduce your name. However, he naturally would not say that. Instead, he smiled mysteriously. Maybe this is fate. Autumn Girl was stunned when she heard this, and then she laughed. You are quite an interesting person. Unlin was delighted. Her favorable impression of him had increased. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips, and there was a ball of anger in her heart. This Unlin was really good at flirting with girls in front of her. Autumn Girl began her sword dance. She was dressed in red, and her exquisite and slender body danced along with the longsword. She was like a butterfly dancing alone under a maple forest, beautiful and elegant, yet with a hint of killing intent and fierceness. It had to be said, Unlin was a bit dazed. This sword dance was really beautiful. Phew. I'm done. It's your turn. After Autumn Girl finished her sword dance, she panted slightly and looked at the fated person in front of her with bright eyes. Her gaze lingered on Unlin for a bit longer. Perhaps it was because of the previous conversation, but there was a bit more anticipation in her eyes. Huh! Unlin was a bit dazed when he heard this, and a sense of danger welled up in his heart. At that time, he was only focused on admiring Autumn Girl's sword dance, but he did not seem to have comprehended anything. Was it nothing in the first place, or did he not comprehend anything? Should he imitate her movements and do a set of radio calisthenics? At this time, Su Xiaolan had already begun her sword dance. Dabai and Xiao Chou gave up on healing. Unlin was unwilling to give up. He picked up his evil-slaying sword and danced with it. Autumn Girl nodded slightly when she saw Su Xiaolan's sword dance. Then, she looked at Unlin, and the corner of her mouth twitched. What was he doing? The sword dance ended. Beads of sweat appeared on Su Xiaolan's fair forehead. Unlin, on the other hand, looked as if he had done a radio calisthenic. He danced with his youth and did not feel anything. Autumn Girl walked toward Unlin. This caused Unlin's heart to beat faster. Is she finally going to choose me? Did you see my amazing talent in the way of the sword through my dance? Perhaps this is just fate. It's all right. Although your aptitude in the Tao of the sword is appalling, there are millions of Daos in this world. There's bound to be one that belongs to you. Autumn Maiden consoled as she patted Unlin's shoulder. Unlin was dumbfounded, and his mouth gaped open slightly. Autumn Girl walked toward Su Xiaolan. A bright smile appeared on her face. Fated one, are you willing to accept the sword Tao inheritance of the Winter Dragon Tomb? Su Xiaolan nodded blankly. She had witnessed Unlin's superb sword skills. She did not expect Autumn Girl to choose her. Was Unlin going easy on her? Unlin's sword dance just now was indeed unsightly. Perhaps he did it on purpose. Thinking of this, Su Xiaolan looked gratefully at Unlin. Thank you. Chapter 248. After receiving the sword inheritance from the Palace of Autumn, Su Xiaolan's aura became even more powerful. Sigh, I'm finally free. You can rest in peace now that you've found such a good successor." Autumn Woman had a nostalgic expression on her face. Then, she smiled bitterly and shook her head helplessly. Autumn Woman didn't say anything else. She bid farewell to Enlin and the others and left the Palace of Autumn. Su Xiaolan excitedly pulled Enlin toward the Palace of Winter. After the sword Dao that Enlin was most proud of had been dealt a blow, his mental state was comparable to Dabai's. One had his sword Dao dignity wounded, and the other had his man's dignity wounded. They both wanted some peace and quiet. They saw the silver-haired Winter Man in the Palace of Winter. Winter Man's opening sentence was, "Life is as lonely as snow. Who will light up my lonely life?" Then, he was captivated by the phoenix-like beautiful and noble Su Xiaolan. "Ah, you're like a fire that melts my heart. This beautiful lady, are you willing to accept my frost inheritance?" Enlin and Dabai the clown were dumbfounded. Su Xiaolan shook her head earnestly. "I don't want it. I'm of the fire element. You don't understand. Ice and fire aren't contradictory to each other. Instead, they're interconnected. If you remove all the coldness from a place, then it's fire," Winter Man explained earnestly. Then, he rambled on and on. Su Xiaolan was finally coaxed into accepting this frost inheritance. She melted a drop of ice into her palm. Although she didn't really believe Winter Man's words, she reluctantly accepted this inheritance with the principle that it would be a waste if she didn't accept it. "Fellow Taoist Su Xiaolan, why don't you leave me a voice transmission talisman?" Winter Man asked with a passionate look in his eyes. "I don't want it. We'll meet again if we're fated." Su Xiaolan rejected him without hesitation. "Ah, I like your fiery personality." Winter Man clutched his chest. He felt like his heart was about to melt again. "Then I'll leave first. The next time we meet, I'll make you fall in love with me." After saying this shamelessly, Winter Man reluctantly flew away from the Palace of Winter. Winter Man had not said a single word to Enlin, the clown, or Dabai. They were treated like air. "Haha, it seems like this frost inheritance is quite useful. When fighting in a world of ice and snow, it can prevent my flames from being affected by the low temperature." Su Xiaolan was pleasantly surprised. She took Enlin's hand and continued to walk towards another palace. This was a good rhythm. Enlin rubbed his face and couldn't help but complain, "Xiaolan, is this Winter Dragon tomb owned by your family?" Su Xiaolan glanced at Enlin and understood Enlin's meaning. She waved her hand and smiled. "Maybe I'm fated with this dragon's tomb." Enlin nodded seriously. Fate is too wonderful for words. The two of them arrived at the fifth palace. This palace was called 1 Year. There are 4 seasons in a year. Could this palace be related to the other palaces? Su Xiaolan looked at the palace in front of her with a hint of eagerness. It should be. Or maybe it's just because the owner of the Dragon Tomb has a literary problem. That's why it was named this way. Enlin wasn't sure either. In any case, he would only know after entering. They pushed open the door and entered. The two of them saw an elegant middle-aged man. After seeing the two of them enter, he took the initiative to greet them. "Welcome to 1 Year, fellow Taoists. At the same time, congratulations on obtaining the inheritances of the 4 seasons. My name is Lord Year." Since this man knew that they had obtained the inheritances of the other 4 palaces, perhaps he really was the boss. Seeing this, Enlin and Su Xiaolan also introduced themselves. Then, they looked at the man in front of them respectfully. They had more or less figured out the nature of this dragon tomb. Every palace had a gravekeeper, and the gravekeeper would then choose the inheritor. As long as winged dragon Shen Yin's aura didn't reject the inheritance would be completed, and the gravekeeper would also obtain freedom. These people had all kinds of strange ways of setting questions. Whether they would give you the inheritance or not seemed to depend entirely on their mood. This could be inferred from the previous 4 gravekeepers. Lord Year looked like a calm man, and he had the demeanor of a boss. After hearing everyone's introduction, he smiled warmly. The inheritances of the Four Seasons Palace are much more outstanding than those of the Zodiac Palace. Unfortunately, the first 2 batches of cultivators were bewitched by the Palace of Heaven and missed out on this inheritance. It's very good that you can resist the temptation of the Heavenly Palace's holy light and advance step by step. Unlin blinked. So, his carpet-style plundering strategy was actually so knowledgeable? Lord Year looked at Unlin, Su Xiaolan, Dabai and the clown and asked with interest, "Then which of you obtained the inheritances of the Four Seasons?" Su Xiaolan took a step forward with a sheepish smile on her face. Lord Year nodded and continued to look at the crowd. There was a short period of silence. Seeing that the others didn't respond, Lord Year couldn't help but ask, "That's it?" Su Xiaolan nodded seriously. "I'm the only one who obtained the inheritance." The corner of Lord Year's mouth twitched slightly. "You obtained all of the Four Seasons?" Su Xiaolan blushed. Even she felt a little embarrassed, but she still nodded. "What a strange fate this is!" Lord Year looked at the sky and sighed. At this moment, Unlin really wanted to chime in. "Boss, look, Su Xiaolan has already obtained so many inheritances. It's time for us little brothers to have a taste of the following inheritances." There was a look of appreciation on Lord Year's face as he gazed at Su Xiaolan. "Initially, I was planning on having the inheritances of spring, summer, autumn, and winter compete with each other to determine the final winner. But now, it's all concentrated on one person. And this person, Xin Yin's aura actually didn't reject it. This is the complete Four Seasons, fellow Taoist Su Xiaolan. The Four Seasons soul jade in this palace is for you." As he spoke, Lord Year took out a gem that flowed with 4 colors, green, yellow, red, and white, and handed it to Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan took the Four Seasons soul jade in a daze. She couldn't react for a moment. Did the inheritance turn into a gifting mode? It felt pretty good, and Lin's eyes widened and his lips trembled. He felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a sword. What the hell was going on now? He didn't do anything, but he was already gifting her a treasure? Then, his eyes became a little dazed. Who am I? Why did I come here? What's the point of me coming here? He felt that other than playing the role of a shocked passerby, there seemed to be nothing else for him to do. "I've completed my mission, and I've done it well." Lord Year tilted his head and looked at Su Xiaolan. He smiled and said, "It's time for me to go. See you again." As he spoke, Lord Year rose into the air and left the palace. Dabai and Xiao Chou were already used to this kind of development. They looked calm and resigned to their fate. "I feel like this bead is affecting the energy in my body." Su Xiaolan's eyes lit up as she spoke. At the same time, the Four Seasons soul jade in her hand exploded with 4 different kinds of light. After a moment, her expression changed drastically. "Ah, I feel like the energy in my body is fusing and expanding." Hearing this, Unlin began to worry. He hurriedly said, "Xiaolan, calm down first. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Su Xiaolan's face was slightly red, as if she was in pain. This made Unlin's heart clench. Dabai and Xiao Chou also came over with concern. Xiao Chou's cultivation base was at half-step soul formation. He was just about to take Su Xiaolan's pulse when Su Xiaolan waved her hand to reject him. Su Xiaolan went into a meditative position and shook her head lightly. "Don't worry, I'm fine. I just feel that I'm about to break through." Unlin, Dabai, Xiao Chou. Chapter 249. 1 human and 2 pets stood in silence. Looking at Su Xiaolan, who was in the process of making a breakthrough, they felt as if there were 10,000 mythological beasts galloping in their hearts. Unlin felt more and more like this dragon tomb was opened by Su Xiaolan's family. Even if they got in through the back door, they wouldn't be able to do this. The vital energy of heaven and earth formed a vortex and surged into Su Xiaolan's body. Su Xiaolan extracted the pure vital energy, and a golden flame seed began to appear on her spirit root, pushing her cultivation base to a higher level. Finally, she broke through a certain shackle. Boom! A powerful aura exuded from her body. She opened her eyes and wisps of golden flames swirled in her limpid eyes, exuding a proud and majestic aura. Congratulations, you've successfully broken through. Hurry up and treat us to a meal. Anlin congratulated Su Xiaolan as he sensed the powerful aura of the spirit-nurturing final stage. Su Xiaolan smiled faintly and looked toward Anlin with her eyes that were still burning with golden flames. Her eyes were enchanting, elegant, and beautiful. There was also a hint of intimacy and gentleness in them. Let me tell you some good news. Not only have I broken through, but my bloodline has also been further activated. Then you should treat us to a meal. Su Xiaolan thought for a moment. She flipped her hand and a crimson fruit appeared in her hand. There were small flaming dragons revolving around the fruit. Here, this is a dragon fruit. It's a third-rank spirit fruit. It's delicious, it's my treat. My God, why does this dragon fruit look different from the ones I've eaten before? Anlin's eyes widened in surprise. He picked up the dragon fruit that Su Xiaolan had given him and took a big bite. Boom! The extremely spicy texture stimulated his taste buds, and he felt as if his taste buds were about to explode. Holy F***ck. Water, give me water. Anlin felt as if there was a fire burning in his mouth. It was real fire. Don't drink water. Swallow it and your mouth won't be spicy anymore. Su Xiaolan advised. Anlin swallowed the fruit. Sure enough, his mouth wasn't spicy anymore. Then, holy sh**t. My stomach. Help. Anlin felt as if his stomach was on fire and was about to explode. When Su Xiaolan saw Anlin's expression, she finally couldn't hold back her laughter. Her silvery laughter resounded in the palace, sounding exceptionally pleasing to the ears. Anlin was very nervous at first, but after his stomach burned, he felt a stream of pure flame energy flowing through his body. He immediately felt extremely comfortable, as if his conception and governing vessels had been unblocked. He blinked his eyes. Is this bitterness followed by sweetness? Su Xiaolan took out another dragon fruit and ate it herself. She said with a smile, Wrong, this is spicy first, then refreshing. It can even slightly increase the realm. Anlin nodded. The taste of the fire dragon fruit was explosive, but after eating it, it felt so good that he couldn't help but continue eating. Therefore, he continued to eat, lingering between spiciness and pleasure. Dabai didn't have the face to look at the two of them. He felt that they were showing off. After eating the fire dragon fruit and resting for a while, the two of them continued on their journey. It's the Palace of Tigers this time? Anlin looked at the signboard of the palace and guessed that it had something to do with the inheritance of beasts this time. Su Xiaolan smiled. I heard Lord Nian talk about the 12 zodiac animals before. This should be the palace with the 12 zodiac animals as the main characters. The two of them pushed open the door and entered with some anticipation. However, what they didn't expect was that the palace was empty. There was nothing inside. Where's the tiger? Anlin asked curiously. He guessed that there should be an exotic beast like a tiger inside the Palace of Tigers, guarding it. Sigh, looks like the inheritance has been taken away. Su Xiaolan was a little disappointed. The group carefully searched the interior of the palace again, but still didn't find anything. They had no choice but to continue on to the next palace. The Palace of Rabbits was still empty. The Palace of Dragons, Palace of Snakes, Palace of Horses, they went through all the palaces of the 12 zodiac animals, but they were all empty. Finally, there was a single zodiac animal palace. There were 12 zodiac animal statues on it. They looked extremely lifelike, and seemed to be worth a lot of money. Anlin tried to move them into his storage ring, but he failed again. They've mastered all 12 zodiac animals. The first two batches of cultivators were way too powerful. They were all defeated by the Palace of Heaven? And Lin stroked his chin with a perplexed expression. If the purpose of this dragon tomb is to find a fated person to inherit its legacy, then wouldn't it be a waste if the fated person to inherit these zodiac signs is killed here? Have you forgotten? Those tomb keepers are actually also very good heirs, Su Xiaolan said with a smile. Makes sense. So the previous inheritances were only the appetizers. Those fated people are actually not important. The real inheritance, the complete inheritance of winged dragon Shanine, if there is one, is probably in that place. He raised his head and looked toward the enchanting palace that was exuding a holy white light. The Palace of Heaven. The two of them looked at the palace. After seeing the holy light, a feeling of wanting to go there surged in their hearts. Let's loot the other palaces first. And Lin didn't dare to look at the Palace of Heaven, and said to Su Xiaolan. Just like that, the two of them continued onward. They arrived at a place called the Palace of Life. This palace was very strange. There were many strange plants growing inside, such as golden trees, bone flowers that were even larger than trees, and grass that glowed with five-colored light. These were all plants that Lin had never seen before, not even in the illustrated handbook of natural treasures. Their vital energy fluctuations were extremely powerful. They were clearly not ordinary plants. Could it be that this was an inheritance related to strange plants? Lin suppressed his curiosity and walked toward the depths of the plants. He then saw a white-haired old man sitting on a chair. There was a table in front of him, on which there were oracle bones, copper coins, grass, and other strange things. Young fated people, welcome to the Palace of Life. I am Elder Fate. We provide the fairest, most accurate, and most powerful fortune-telling services here. Would you like to come? The white-haired old man narrowed his eyes and spoke with a benevolent expression. Lin and Su Xiaolan were both taken aback. A fortune-teller? There are no other inheritances, tests, or treasures? Lin blinked and asked curiously. Elder Fate chuckled. The Palace of Life only provides fortune-telling services. I'm already halfway into the grave, so I don't have any treasures to offer. I only know how to tell fortunes. The price ranges from 10,000 to 30,000 spirit stones. Let's see what you want. The corner of Lin's mouth twitched slightly. F***ck, who are you trying to fool? I'm already halfway into the grave, so what do I need spirit stones for? Just as he was considering whether to turn around and leave, Su Xiaolan had already walked up and asked with a smile, All right then, Elder Fate, can I trouble you to tell for me what dangers there are in the Palace of Heaven? Huh? Little girl, you really know how to take advantage of loopholes. That's right, you asked the wrong question. I'm telling about personal fortune, and it's about the person, not a certain place. I can help you tell what dangers you will encounter in the Palace of Heaven, Elder Fate said with a calm expression. Su Xiaolan thought for a moment. The dangers she would encounter could also be the dangers Lin would encounter, so there wasn't much difference. Thus she nodded and said, All right then, you go ahead. Pay up first. This will cost 30,000 spirit stones. Elder Fate stretched out his hand. Lin, this was the most unstylish fortune-teller he had ever seen. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips. She fished out 3 vital stones from her storage ring and handed them to Elder Fate. Elder Fate connected a white thread to Su Xiaolan's wrist. He closed his eyes, and the oracle bone and copper coins on the table began to move on their own. After a moment, he looked toward Su Xiaolan with a shocked expression. You have an extremely strong connection with the Palace of Heaven, he said. This kind of powerful karma is like an impenetrable barrier that obstructs my vision. What's your relationship with Dragon Master Divine Sound? Su Xiaolan blinked. There's no relationship. Speaking of which, what dangers will I encounter in the Palace of Heaven? Elder Fate shook his head slowly. I don't know, Su Xiaolan. Lin, by the way, can I get a refund? Su Xiaolan asked expressionlessly. Lin also looked at the old man in front of him with a cold expression. This guy is definitely a fake. F***ck, you haven't told anything yet, you still have the nerve to take money? Are you a robber? Elder Fate was embarrassed by their stares, and he hurriedly explained, I need to expend a lot of energy when I tell fortunes. These spirit stones are for me to replenish my energy, so I can't return them. If I return them, I won't be able to tell fortunes next time. Elder Fate spoke with great sincerity, and his eyes even reddened. This caused Lin and Su Xiaolan's anger to subside quite a bit. Alright, then you can also tell for me. Let's do something simple. Help me tell when I'll have a girlfriend. Lin originally wanted to ask Elder Fate to tell what dangers he would encounter in the Palace of Heaven. However, he was afraid that Elder Fate would use the same words as Su Xiaolan to bluff him. Thus, he chose a simpler one. What's a girlfriend? Elder Fate blinked. Lin returned to his senses and corrected himself. Tell when I'll have a Dao partner. Su Xiaolan blushed slightly when she heard this, and she looked elsewhere. Elder Fate laughed heartily. He was good at this, and he immediately said, No problem, no problem. This only costs 10,000 spirit stones. Lin nodded and handed a vital stone to Elder Fate. Elder Fate used the white silk thread to wrap around Lin's wrist, and he began to tell. A moment later, he broke out in a cold sweat. Chapter 250. Elder Fate felt like he was on the verge of breaking down. This was because he couldn't see through Lin's fate at all. If his investigation into the relationship between Su Xiaolan and the Palace of Heaven was blocked by a powerful barrier of karma, then investigating Lin's fate was a dense fog that he couldn't see through at all. Forget about Lin's karma, he couldn't even divine if Lin would have food to eat tomorrow. How could this be? It didn't make sense. His cultivation base was too high to divine? But the male in front of him was only of the spirit-nurturing initial stage. The more Elder Fate thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong, and the more he panicked. Seeing that Elder Fate's expression wasn't right, Lin thought that the road of love was going to be bumpy. He also became nervous. How is it? When will I get a Dao partner? Elder Fate gulped. He felt that if he told the truth, he would definitely be treated as a swindler. At that time, even the 40,000 spirit stones would be snatched back. Should I coax him a little? Elder Fate thought for a moment, then cleared his throat. He shook his head and said, From afar, the mountains are colorful, up close, the water is silent. Young friend, your karma isn't far off. Only by transcending the 3 tribulations for 100 years can 2 hearts appreciate each other. You and her will be an extremely enviable Dao partner. There was no doubt that Elder Fate's glib tongue was extremely impressive. Regardless of whether it was true or not, Lin was already grinning from ear to ear from the praise. He felt that the 10,000 spirit stones were well spent. Just like that, Lin and Su Xiaolan left the Palace of Life. Lin had originally wanted to divine something else, but unexpectedly, Elder Fate directly refused. He said that each person could only divine one and told them to hurry up and leave. He had no choice but to leave with a slightly regretful expression. Xiaolan, do you think this old man's divination is accurate? Lin asked with a bit of a chuckle. Ah. Su Xiaolan lowered her head, and a faint blush appeared on her face. It should be believable, she replied in a serious tone. A fortune-telling palace can't be set up just to scam people out of money. That would be far too immoral. Lin nodded in agreement. My karma is coming within 100 years. Actually, I'm quite satisfied with this time span. It's neither too long nor too short. Su Xiaolan nodded. 100 years is enough to recognize a person, and it's also enough to find someone to walk the same path as you. Lin, what's your ideal Dao companion like? She raised her head and looked at Lin. Her gaze was bright and extremely moving. Lin and Su Xiaolan looked at each other. His heart was beating like a train, and he hurriedly looked away. No, I have to be steady. If he acted too abruptly now, he would lose Fairy Lon Lon. I'm still young. I haven't thought about this. And Lin said perfunctorily. That's right. You're still so young. What's the point of thinking about something so far away? At your age, you should follow me, Dabai, to visit a brothel. Woof! Dabai forcefully interrupted. Su Xiaolan. Lin, you've been to a brothel before? Lin hurriedly explained. How could I? Why would I go to a brothel? Dabai smiled wickedly. Have you forgotten about Sister Lan Yu at the Spring River Pavilion? Woof? Holy F***ck. Dabai, do you still have the nerve to say that? If it wasn't for me trying to get you back, would I have gone? Lin's veins popped as he clenched his fists and was about to teach Dabai a lesson. Seeing this, Dabai immediately ran. Don't run. Lin roared and chased after him. Come and chase me. If you can catch me, I'll let you. Dabai yelled as he ran. Su Xiaolan. She massaged her brows. So, Lin had been to a brothel after all? In the end, Dabai was still caught by Lin. Then, a series of pung 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 sounds ensued. After beating up Dabai, everyone continued forward and arrived at the Palace of Yellow. It looked like the last 4 palaces were Heaven, Earth, Black and Yellow. Lin felt that they could actually add a Universe, Chaos and Chaos series, but after thinking about it, it seemed too domineering. It was understandable that Winged Dragon Shen Yin didn't add it. Before entering the gate, Lin had Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 lead the way. These tough and powerful mechanical puppets were the most suitable for this kind of task. After the gate opened, an extremely oppressive aura swept out from within. It was as if a huge mountain was crushing down on everyone, making it hard for them to breathe. Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 immediately unleashed their ion deprivation protective barrier, isolating them from this powerful aura. Pressuring him with his aura the moment they met, it seemed like this tomb keeper wasn't too friendly. If you want to obtain Shin Yin's inheritance, then piss off to the Palace of Heaven. Don't bother me here. A coarse voice boomed out, causing the space around them to tremble uncontrollably. Lin focused his gaze and saw a red-haired man with a shirt off, revealing his bronze-colored muscles. This man's entire body was enshrouded in red flames, appearing extremely domineering and intimidating. Lin mustered up his courage and asked, Then, Senior, what do you have here? Heh! The red-haired man looked at Lin with a cold expression. I have a fire spirit vital bead here. It's in my body. Do you think you have the ability to obtain it? The man patted the area where his heart was, and the corners of his lips curled up in a provocative manner. Lin understood now. Instance dungeons had already become a method of killing monsters and obtaining treasures. He and Su Xiaolan were both a little hesitant. This man was clearly a powerful being of the soul formation stage, and judging from the aura he was exuding, he was at least of the soul formation intermediate stage, perhaps even the soul formation final stage. If they really fought, this battle would definitely become extremely dangerous. Ding dong! The system's Special Missions tab suddenly flashed. Lin immediately focused his attention and opened the system in his mind. Detected that host has encountered the Fire Spirit Vital Bead. Now assigning the following mission. Frowny face. Absorb all the Fire Essence energy within the Fire Spirit Vital Bead. Reward for mission success. Obtain the Fire-type cultivation method, Wings of True Fire, Stage 1. Penalty for mission failure. Be paralyzed for 1 month, unable to use vital energy during this period. Time limit 2 hours. Lin grimaced upon seeing this mission. The system's habit of sending him to wherever there was danger was probably impossible to change. Then, he only had 2 choices now. He could choose to fight like a man, or he could choose to be paralyzed for a month like a coward. If he chose to fight, there would be a terrifying outcome, and that was that he might be killed by this red-haired man. Are you going to fight or not? If not, then scram. The red-haired man seemed to be a little impatient, and even the flames on his body became more aggressive. Fight! Unlin steeled his heart and stepped forward. Su Xiaolan, don't fight. Leave this person to me, and the fire spirit vital bead is mine. Su Xiaolan didn't really care about the fire spirit vital bead. Her vermilion bird sect didn't lack fire essence items like this. However, she was a little worried about Enlin. You really don't need my help? Enlin shook his head and smiled. I really don't need your help. He gripped his evil-slaying sword and took a step forward. His aura erupted without reservation. Oh? Although you're very weak, you're acting like a man. The red-haired man grinned and also erupted with his aura. Red flames roared and danced along with him. This man's aura was extremely fearsome. He had already reached the soul formation final stage. His powerful aura crashed into Enlin's body, causing his muscles to tremble involuntarily. Gundam 1, Gundam 2, you guys are in charge of attacking. Dabai, Xiaoqiu, you guys are in charge of holding the line. Enlin yelled from behind. Dabai's big round eyes widened. Then what are you in charge of, Big Brother and Wolf? Enlin cleared his throat before replying with a calm expression. I'll be in charge. Dabai, Xiaoqiu, Su Xiaolan, the red-haired man. Chapter 251. The crimson-haired man's lips twitched upon hearing Enlin's confident words. F***ck, you're not a man. The crimson-haired man really wanted to beat someone up. Gundam 1, Gundam 2, attack. Enlin roared. The two Gundams immediately pounced toward the crimson-haired man with all their might. The crimson-haired man stepped forward, and over 100 crimson flaming dragons materialized in the air before crashing toward the two Gundams with scorching heat. The two Gundams were extremely agile, and they transformed into a series of silver afterimages as they evaded the flaming dragons. One of the Gundams immediately unleashed a purple halo of light after closing in on the crimson-haired man, and a powerful gravitational field was unleashed. Boom! The earth instantly caved in. The crimson-haired man felt as if he were being crushed by a gargantuan mountain. This is gravity? The man's expression shifted. Just as he was beginning to panic, the other Gundam had already slashed toward his face with its light sword. The man roared in rage as the power of his domain quickly proliferated outward. Crimson flames engulfed his entire body like raging waves before materializing into the shape of an armored giant. This flaming armor was extremely solid, almost as if it were solid. The armored giant didn't even try to evade the Gundam's light sword. Instead, it threw a punch. Boom! The fist collided with the light sword and flames exploded. The Gundam's particle sword tore through the flaming giant's fist, but the Gundam's body was knocked back by the powerful force of the explosion. What kind of sword is this? It can even slice through my domain armor. The crimson-haired man was extremely astonished by the abilities of these two silver puppets. Just as the Gundam was knocked back, Xiaoqiu took advantage of the opportunity to appear next to the crimson-haired man. Now, strike his knee. Enlin roared after activating his divine inspection technique. Xiaoqiu unleashed all of his power as he viciously swung his staff toward the crimson-haired man's knee. The silver rod, which carried a tremendous force, collided with the armor, and a loud sound accompanied by a shockwave swept out in all directions. Crack! The armor around his knees shattered. The armored giant's legs bent, and it fell to the side as if it had lost its balance. The red-haired man felt a chill run down his spine upon seeing this. He didn't pay too much attention to Dabai, a spirit beast that hadn't even reached the soul formation stage, which was why the clown was able to take advantage of it. But he never expected that the clown's lightning-fast attack would hit his most crucial part. Impossible! How could he know the weakness of my armor domain? Coincidence? As the red-haired man's thoughts raced, a white mist suddenly rose and enveloped the entire space. Azure Wolf's Cloud. Dabai unleashed an immortal spell that could isolate one's vision. Just as the red-haired man's flaming armored giant collapsed, the gravity suddenly became even more terrifying. Originally, The gravity that only affected his battle had now become a monstrous gravity that prevented him from moving. Impossible! How could he still have energy left? The red-haired man asked in shock. The puppet's strength had far exceeded his expectations. He decisively crippled one of the flaming armored giant's arms. The arm transformed into a huge flaming sword and flew toward the Gundam that was using gravity. Even though his vision was blocked, he could still use his divine sense to detect the enemy's location. This huge flaming sword was extremely fast, and it almost hit the Gundam that was using the gravity technique. The huge flaming sword sent the Gundam flying for over 1,000 feet, and it flew out of the Palace of Yellow's range. However, at the same time, the Gundam wielding the light sword had already flown toward the giant's other knee and slashed at it. Boom! A huge explosion erupted. The giant's other knee was shattered, and it knelt on the ground. The red-haired man inside the flaming armored giant swayed violently as he suffered the backlash of the domain's aura. He spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, the clown's silver staff began to ferociously strike the flaming armored giant's head. This was the weakness that Enlin had discovered using his divine inspection technique. If the silver staff struck the giant's head at this moment, this armor domain would completely collapse. I've really been underestimated. I'm actually being bullied by a half-step soul formation stage monkey. The red-haired man's eyes blazed with flames as he spoke with a vicious expression. At this moment, he chose to let the armor self-destruct. Boom! The self-destruction of the flaming armor transformed into the most ferocious flames that spread out in all directions. This was the full power attack of a soul formation final stage cultivator. The power contained within the flames was extremely terrifying. It melted the ground, swallowed the palace, and transformed the floating stone continent into a sea of flames. The clown was sent flying by the explosion of flames. Even Enlin and Su Xiaolan, who were standing in the distance, were swept away by this violent explosion of flames. They flew into the distance and tumbled to the ground. The red-haired man walked out of the sea of flames and walked toward Enlin. Although there was blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, his footsteps were extremely firm. His towering rage made him seem like a demonic god, and there was a bloodthirsty expression on his face. Not bad. You actually forced me to the point where I self-destructed my domain. However, your physical strength is simply too weak. You're so weak that you don't even have the courage to fight me head-on. Without those two puppets, I can fight 100 people like you. The man walked toward Enlin, and the crimson flames carried with them a bloodthirsty and violent aura as they revolved around his body. Since you've chosen to fight, you should be prepared to pay with your life if you lose. The red-haired man looked at the collapsed Enlin and stabbed his finger toward Enlin's heart. Now, it's time for me to take your life. In the distance, a white laser arrived first. Boom! The laser struck the red-haired man's chest and sent him flying. Pfff! The man spat out a mouthful of blood. His chest was a bloody mess from the laser attack. Behind him, the dark purple dragon flames from the other Gundam arrived and engulfed his entire body. This kind of all-pervasive flame crazily attacked his body. The man howled in pain. Even though he had a soul formation stage body, his defenses would be weakened if he used too much power. The dark purple dragon fire had obviously done a lot of damage to him. Enlin seemed to be prepared for this. His eyes turned snowy white, and a pair of white wings of wind spread open on his back. He charged toward the red-haired man at a speed that was too fast to be seen by the naked eye. So fast, the red-haired man's pupils contracted, and the threat of death enveloped his entire body. His reaction was extremely fast, and his fist instinctively punched toward Enlin. However, Enlin's reaction was even faster. He twisted his head and evaded the red-haired man's fist. The evil-slaying sword was enveloped in streams of wind as it stabbed toward the red-haired man. It wasn't aimed at his heart or his head. Instead, it was aimed at the red-haired man's navel. In that instant, the red-haired man finally realized that he had underestimated his opponent. The power that the man in front of him had unleashed in that instant was far beyond his expectations. What was even more terrifying was that Enlin was extremely familiar with his fatal weakness. The black longsword pierced through the red-haired man's navel. The red-haired man felt as if he had been imprisoned in that instant. He was completely immobilized, and white smoke rose from his body. "I've underestimated you," the man said slowly. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face as he flipped his hair. "Remember, don't talk so much when you're fighting. If you want to flex, do it after the fight." The red-haired man's face convulsed. He liked to flex when he was fighting, and this was none of his business? "You actually died a long time ago, right?" Enlin suddenly said. The red-haired man's body trembled slightly. He looked at the man in front of him and didn't say anything. "The beast pet in my pocket told me. She said that you no longer have any life essence, and you can only survive by relying on the fire spirit vital bead," Enlin continued. "Your beast pet is really powerful." The red-haired man's body began to slowly melt. His skin turned into red lava and flowed to the ground. Enlin immediately asked upon seeing that he had already begun to melt, "Are the 3 tomb guardians behind you the same as you?" "Heges." The red-haired man's body began to melt even faster, but there was a hint of a relieved smile on his face. Splash! His body completely turned into boiling lava and fell to the ground. Enlin, Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 ran back. They had expended too much energy and had returned to their storage rings to devour spirit stones. Xiao Chou and Dabai also walked over. Both of them were injured. In particular, Xiao Chou's fur had been charred by the explosion. Enlin had given them blood spirit pills. He had prepared quite a few of these spirit pills that could replenish one's energy and blood. After the battle, he obtained the spoils of war as he wished. The fire spirit vital bead hovered in midair where the red-haired man's heart was, radiating a crimson light. Su Xiaolan walked over and held the fire spirit vital bead in her hand as she curiously probed the aura within it. "What a rich fire essence! It's almost as rich as the holy bead in my sect. No wonder it could become the core of a soul formation final stage cultivator. You have to be careful when you use it. If you don't control it well, it might explode," Su Xiaolan cautioned as she handed the fire spirit vital bead to Enlin. "It might explode?" It would have been better if he hadn't said anything. However, Enlin instantly panicked upon hearing this. He held the fire spirit vital bead in his hand as he said uneasily, "Then go further away and prepare a healing technique. What are you going to do?" Su Xiaolan was a little uneasy. "I'm going to absorb all the fire essence in the fire spirit vital bead," Enlin said solemnly. Su Xiaolan's eyes widened in shock. "Just like that?" Enlin nodded. "Why?" Su Xiaolan grimaced. "I'm telling you, you'll die if you play with fire like this. I think it's more realistic if I prepare a coffin for you." Chapter 252. Is it really that terrifying? Enlin's eyes widened as he stared at Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan nodded solemnly. "If you absorb it like this, you're guaranteed to die." Enlin looked at the crimson spirit bead in his hand with a puzzled expression. "Then how do I absorb it?" Su Xiaolan massaged her brows in exasperation. "I don't know why you want to absorb the fire essence in the bead, but I can set up a spell formation to make the fire essence more gentle. At the same time, I can set up a self-detonation warning. If there are signs of self-detonation, then you must immediately stop absorbing the fire essence." Enlin looked at Su Xiaolan gratefully. "All right, then I'll have to trouble you. Sai, you're always so reckless. You deserve to die next time." Su Xiaolan glared at Enlin. She was clearly very displeased with his reckless behavior. Enlin scratched his head in embarrassment and didn't dare to say anything. After a while, the spell formation was set up. He sat in the center of the spell formation with his legs crossed and began to absorb the fire essence from the fire spirit vital bead in his hand. Extremely pure fire essence began to flow into his body, causing it to become scorching hot. 1 hour later, Unlin's entire body began to turn crimson. His body was boiling hot, and white mist began to emerge from it. Outside the spell formation, Su Xiaolan clenched her fists tightly as she looked at Unlin with a nervous expression. Above her head, Xiao Hong was swaying with the wind. This was a familiar scene, but it was a completely different state of mind. Xiao Hong was a lot calmer now. She looked at her master, who was about to explode, with a curious expression. Even if her master was killed, she could rely on photosynthesis to survive. There was nothing to be afraid of. Boom! The spell formation began to tremble, and an alarm began to sound. Unlin! It's going to explode. Hurry up and stop! Su Xiaolan yelled. Unlin's entire body turned crimson, and it was as if his blood was boiling, but he couldn't stop. Yes, his entire body was no longer under his control. The only thing he could do was to continuously absorb the fire essence energy. Just as Su Xiaolan was about to rush into the formation and forcibly interrupt Unlin's actions, the center of the formation suddenly changed. Red flaming feathers condensed in the air, flickering with beautiful fiery light. From afar, it looked like the feathers of a phoenix soaring in the sky. So beautiful! Su Xiaolan stared at the fiery feathers fluttering in the air and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. They wouldn't land on the ground. Instead, they danced around Unlin's body agilely, releasing light and heat like cheerful fire elves. The speed at which it absorbed the fire source became faster, but the alarm of the array formation no longer sounded. Another half an hour passed. The fire feather fused into Unlin's body, and the fire spirit elemental bead dimmed and turned into a useless rock. Ding dong, mission completed. The first stage of the wings of true fire cultivation technique began to flow into his body. Very quickly, this cultivation technique, which contained the origin power of true fire and could greatly increase his battle prowess, completely fused with him. Unlin stood up with bright eyes. I feel like my entire body is filled with power. I feel like my blood is boiling. I want to fight. Su Xiaolan didn't expect that such a huge amount of fire essence energy would be completely absorbed by Unlin. Even though she was mentally prepared, she was still given a fright. Come, let's go to the Palace of Black. I want to fight. Unlin's eyes flickered with excitement. Dubai. Big Brother and is actually so hot-blooded? This doesn't fit his character. Xiao Chou. I don't know why, but seeing Big Brother and like this, I'm ignited. Xiao Red calmly shrank into Su Xiaolan's robes. Big Sister Su Xiaolan, I think Master is courting death again. I'll hide here until the storm blows over. Su Xiaolan. Unlin didn't waste any more time and walked toward the Palace of Black first. He kicked open the door of the palace with one foot and stepped in aggressively. The tomb keeper of the Palace of Black was given a fright. However, he quickly calmed down and narrowed his eyes at Unlin. What a strong battle intent. Is this a declaration of war? Unlin looked at the tomb keeper. He was a tall and thin young man with fair skin. This man also had a pair of extremely exquisite dragon horns on his head, giving off a sense of majesty. Horned dragon? Unlin looked at the man, his eyes blazing with battle intent. What good stuff do you have here? A cold glint flashed across the young man's eyes. He patted his chest. There's a black lightning dragon ball here. If you're not afraid of death, come and take it. Unlin chortled with glee. My entire body is brimming with power now. Die. Su Xiaolan, Xiao Chou, Dubai. It's over. Big Brother and has gone crazy. Unlin let loose a loud roar. His entire body slowly turned crimson red, and his aura soared explosively. Eat my fist, he roared. He stomped his foot on the ground and shot toward the young man like a cannonball. Then, he threw a punch at the man in front of him. The young man responded expressionlessly with a punch of his own. Boom! The terrifying power of the collision caused the ground around them to crack open. Enlin flew backward as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. He crashed into the palace wall, causing it to explode. Then, he flew out of everyone's field of vision. Su Xiaolan, Xiao Chou, why didn't Big Brother unrelease the two Gundams? Dabai spoke as if he had seen through the truth. It's probably because Big Brother An's brain was fried when he absorbed the fire essence from the fire spirit vital bead. Don't you realize that he's like an idiot now? Su Xiaolan instantly came to a realization upon hearing this. She clapped her hands together. No wonder. That's a real possibility. She then suggested, then let's retreat and wait for Enlin to recover first. Xiao Chou and Dabai didn't object and were about to leave. To their surprise, a familiar voice sounded in the distance. Ha 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 ha. What a powerful opponent. I'm fired up. A man flew toward them on his sword before unleashing a powerful sword strike. My God, Big Brother and Nose sword kinesis flight. Dabai let loose another cry of surprise. Enlin's sword flashed like a rainbow as it slashed toward the young man. You can't win a battle just by being hot-blooded. You're seeking death if you don't recognize the difference in power between you and your opponent. The young man's hands transformed into dragon claws and easily caught Enlin's sword strike. He opened his mouth and blew, and a hurricane sword blade materialized in the air. This hurricane sword blade was imbued with the terrifying power of the dragon vein, and it reached Enlin in the blink of an eye, sending him flying with blood gushing from his mouth. The young man clasped his hands behind his back, and the aura of a horned dragon swept outward. He's too weak. You guys can all come at me together. Dabai and Xiao Chou looked at each other before picking up Enlin, who had fallen to the ground with blood gushing out of his mouth, and immediately running away. Su Xiaolan had also unleashed a 30-feet-tall wall of flames, which was extremely dazzling and obscured the young man's field of vision. Within the palace, the voices became softer and softer. Let go of me. Don't be a coward if you're a man. I feel like my body is full of power, I can still fight. Shut up, F***ck. I don't have such a retarded master, woof. Enlin, calm down. I'll help you check if your brain is fried. After the wall of flames disappeared, everyone had already disappeared from the palace. The young man. Boring. Chapter 253. Enlin lay on the ground, the flush on his face still hadn't faded. Dabai was sitting on top of him, his two large paws pressing down on Enlin's hands. Let go of me, Dabai, what are you doing to me? Enlin wanted to struggle, but he had just been injured and Dabai's several hundred kilograms weight was pressing down on him, so it was quite difficult for him to struggle. Dabai spat. Do you think I want to press down on you? I'm trying to stop you from going crazy, woof. Let go of me, I'm not crazy. Enlin was still struggling. Seeing this, Xiao Chou used the withered vines binding technique on Enlin, binding his body tightly. Enlin. Pressing down on me and binding me up? Does it have to be so perverted? Xiao Chou, Su Xiaolan walked over to Enlin and squatted down. She placed a slender finger on Enlin's forehead, releasing a faint cooling sensation to cool down his body. After a moment, she said indifferently, your body temperature has reached over 60 degrees. If you were a normal person, you would have died a long time ago. Your condition is slightly better. Your body isn't damaged, but there's something wrong with your brain. Enlin's restlessness gradually subsided due to Su Xiaolan's immortal spell. However, his lips twitched when he heard the last sentence. Who would have thought that the inheritance of ice I learned would come in handy so quickly? Su Xiaolan said with a teasing smile. I also didn't think that learning the wings of true fire would have such severe repercussions. Enlin chuckled self-mockingly. He finally came to his senses now. What the hell was this hot-blooded? Just then, he actually used the body of a spirit-nurturing stage cultivator to take on the horned dragon of the soul formation final stage. Even though he had many cultivation techniques, he was still seeking death fortunately, that young man liked to flex and he ran away quickly. Otherwise, he really might have died there. Wow, Big Brother and is finally back to normal, woof. Dabai wagged his snowy white tail as he squatted down with excitement. F***ck, Dabai, be gentle. Unlin was already injured, and this time, he was almost out of breath. Seeing that Unlin had returned to normal, the dog pressure technique and binding play were removed. Unlin swallowed a spiritual blood pill and began to meditate to recover from his injuries. Time slowly passed, and the light in the dragon tomb gradually dimmed, sinking into darkness. This arcane realm has day and night? Unlin blinked. Maybe it's to make the tomb keepers feel like they're living a normal life, Su Xiaolan guessed. Unlin shook his head and said sympathetically, the life of a tomb keeper is so boring, quite pitiful. Su Xiaolan was a little depressed. I really don't know why this tomb needs so many tomb keepers. If it's really for the sake of inheritance, they could have set up some traps and illusionary realms to select people. After the two of them expressed their sympathy for the tomb keepers, they began to discuss how to kill the young man from the Palace of Black. In the end, they came up with a battle plan and charged into the Palace of Black again. A meaningful smile appeared on the young man's face as he looked at the group of people charging into the Palace of Black. I didn't think you guys would have the guts to come back. Cut the crap, hand over your life. Unlin roared and immediately released Gundam 1 and Gundam 2. The young man's expression changed slightly when he saw Gundam 1 and Gundam 2. However, he didn't care. After all, the metal puppets controlled by cultivators of the spirit-nurturing stage couldn't be that powerful. However, the young man soon realized how naive his thoughts were. The coordination between the two Gundams was simply nature-defying. One used gravitational field, superparticle chains, and other terrifying restraining techniques, while the other used light sword slashes and laser cannons. The young man was overwhelmed. Especially Unlin, who was guiding the battle from the side like a military counselor, was able to find the young man's flaws every time, causing him to be injured again and again. Howl! The young man roared angrily. Dragon scales started to cover his entire body, and the power of his bloodline was completely activated. He unleashed his full strength and sent one of the Gundams flying with a punch. Blue lightning burst forth from his body, and he pounced toward Unlin like a bolt of lightning. At this time, killing Unlin, who was controlling the metal puppets and had the ability to see through their flaws, was the correct choice. However, just as the distance between him and Unlin was reduced to a mere 30 feet, Unlin suddenly burst into laughter. Boom! A terrifying pillar of flames soared into the sky and enveloped him within. Su Xiaolan made a hand seal and unleashed the full power of her divine phoenix bloodline. The flames of the pillar of flames took on a golden hue. Not only was it extremely hot, but it also had an extremely powerful restraining power. The clown unleashed his black flame domain and blocked the young man's attack head-on. Dabai whipped up a gust of wind, causing the flames of the pillar of flames to become even more intense. At the same time, Unlin made a bow-drawing gesture. Flaming feathers fluttered in the air and quickly condensed into a crimson arrow. The extreme heat caused the surrounding space to distort slightly. An immortal spell derived from the first stage of the Wings of True Fire, Crimson God Arrow. Whoosh! The Crimson God Arrow was extremely fast, leaving a crimson trail in its wake. It passed under the clown's armpit and pierced the young man's chest. This was one of the flaws identified by the divine inspection technique. The young man was caught off guard, and the Crimson God Arrow pierced through his chest with extreme heat. The clown and Su Xiaolan retreated almost immediately after he was struck by the arrow. Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 finished charging up their superparticle photovoltaic cannons and fired. The young man only felt an arrow in his chest, which caused his defenses to falter. Then, he felt the golden energy blast hurtling toward him. The superparticle photovoltaic cannons consumed a lot of energy, but they were also extremely powerful. The terrifying energy blasted the palace of black into smithereens and created a terrifying crater in the floating boulder. "Haha, we did it!" Unlin panted as he laughed. "If he's blasted into smithereens, will the black lightning dragon ball also be blasted into smithereens?" Su Xiaolan was a little worried. Unlin shook his head. "Don't worry, a soul formation final stage horned dragon won't be blasted into smithereens so easily. If it really is blasted into smithereens, then I'll be in big trouble. I still have something important to do." Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 were almost completely drained of energy. They immediately flew back into Enlin's storage ring and used every second they had to replenish their energy. Howl! An earth-shattering dragon roar sounded in the midst of the flying dust and debris. Immediately afterward, a gargantuan black figure soared into the sky. It was over 1,000 feet in length, and its terrifying aura created a hurricane that blew away the dust and debris, revealing its mighty body to everyone. "That's right. You think you can defeat me with this kind of attack? You're looking down on me too much." The horned dragon revealed its true form. Its voice was like a clap of thunder, and it was extremely powerful. Blood gushed out of its gargantuan body, dyeing its entire body red. It had clearly been severely wounded. Although it won't be blasted into smithereens, it will definitely be severely wounded. Enlin didn't panic at the sight of the horned dragon. Instead, he heaved a sigh of relief with a smile on his face. "Do you think I won't be able to kill you just because I'm severely wounded?" The horned dragon roared with rage. A monstrous dragon might erupted from its body, causing the wind and clouds to churn violently. Thick clouds began to gather in the sky as boundless lightning might began to gather. "I only need one attack to deal with you guys." The horned dragon's eyes were filled with authority. Its gargantuan body rose into the sky, and it began to summon wind and rain. Countless menacing bolts of lightning began to gather in the sky before the horned dragon. Enlin raised his head and saw that the horned dragon seemed to have condensed thousands of bolts of lightning into one. An extremely fearsome lightning might cause heaven and earth to tremble. Compress, compress, and compress. The lightning within the sea of lightning condensed into a bolt of divine lightning. The divine lightning slowly turned from blue to purple, and finally, there was a hint of gold within the purple. As soon as the purple-gold lightning appeared, it released a king's might that made it hard for people to breathe, causing them to feel intimidated. This final attack seems a little powerful. Enlin's lips trembled slightly. It had to be said, he was a little scared. For the first time, he felt uncertain. The horned dragon circled proudly in the sky. However, there was only awe and reverence in its eyes as it looked at the purple-gold lightning. "This is the most powerful dragon lightning, and it's invincible below the return to void stage. Die." The purple-gold lightning descended at an incredible speed. It was like a sharp sword that sliced through the night sky, and it became the only color between heaven and earth. The horned dragon turned to look at Enlin. It wanted to see how Enlin was going to be obliterated by the purple-gold lightning. Then, it saw Enlin extend a finger. Immediately afterward, a peculiar scene unfolded. The purple-gold lightning suddenly became motionless. How dazzling was that light! How beautiful and breathtaking it was for it to remain motionless in the night sky. But, why the F***ck isn't it moving? The horned dragon's eyes widened as it looked at the smile on Enlin's face. A boundless chill suddenly welled up in its heart. No way. He's joking, right? I've heard that this technique is invincible below the return to void stage. I wonder if it's suitable for you. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face as he pointed his finger toward a certain part of the horned dragon's body. Go. Holy F***ck. This doesn't make sense. The horned dragon roared. The purple-gold lightning moved, and it instantly pierced through the horned dragon's body with boundless royal might. The horned dragon's pained wails reverberated throughout the sky. Chapter 254. The purple-golden lightning was so powerful that it pierced through the dragon's body in the blink of an eye. The destructive might of the lightning wreaked havoc on its body, tearing apart every inch of its skin. Howl! The dragon's anguished wail reverberated throughout heaven and earth. Its body of over 1,000 feet long crashed to the ground, causing the floating boulder to tremble. Blood trickled down from the dragon's mouth. It stared in shock at the handsome male walking toward it. It still couldn't believe that it had been defeated by a cultivator of the spirit-nurturing stage. It was already incredible that Unlin could identify the flaws in its attack. Who would have thought that he could even control the purple-golden lightning of the Lord of Lightning? What kind of F***king freak is he? It couldn't believe it, it couldn't understand it. It's only right that you're shocked. The demon king of arrogance also experienced the same thing. Unlin walked up to the horned dragon and looked at its head, which was several dozen times larger than him. I'm going to suck your energy essence dry now. Do you have any last words? The dragon. Why can you control the purple-golden lightning? It still hadn't figured out why it had lost. Now it was finally able to voice out its biggest question. That's right, even if it was going to die, it had to die with clarity. Unlin replied calmly, because I'm the Lightning King of Lightning, the Lord of Lightning. The dragon's chest constricted, and it spat out another mouthful of blood. Do you have anything else to say? Unlin asked again. The dragon shook its head. I don't have any attachments in this world. All I'm waiting for is someone who can defeat me. I just didn't think that this person would be so stupid when he really came. Unlin. He didn't say anything else. He pressed his hand against the dragon's gigantic body. A white light flashed, and the dragon's energy essence quickly flowed into his body. He did this because of the system's water cultivation method mission. Stage 1 Divine Liquid Creation Technique. Condition: absorb all the energy essence of a soul formation stage horned dragon. After a year, he finally had the chance to complete this mission. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Su Xiaolan, Dabai, and the clown saw that Unlin was sucking the weird stuff again, and they couldn't help but feel nervous. They were afraid that he would go crazy again like last time. Soon, the horned dragon's profound energy was completely absorbed by Unlin. Its body turned into a burst of blue light and gradually dissipated. Only a bead with lightning entwined around it floated in the air, emitting bursts of energy fluctuations. After obtaining the divine liquid creation art, Unlin's aura completely changed, and a vigorous life force filled his body. He pointed his finger at the void, and in an instant, countless water droplets condensed. These water droplets accumulated and eventually formed the shape of a human. As the blue light shone brightly, another Unlin appeared in front of everyone. Su Xiaolan, Dabai, and the clown all widened their eyes as they stared at the two Unlin in front of them. These two Unlin's appearance, demeanor, aura, all of their characteristics were exactly the same. They were unable to tell the difference even though they were standing right in front of them. Seeing everyone's dumbstruck expressions, one of Unlin chortled with glee. This is my new technique, water clone technique. How is it? Are you shocked? Su Xiaolan covered her mouth with her hand, and a hint of excitement appeared in her eyes. My God, you've mastered such a rare immortal spell? Normally, only return to void stage mighty figures would be able to use this type of clone technique. Unlin leaned against Dabai with a smug expression. This is only the first stage. If I learn a higher stage cultivation method in the future, not only will I look the same, but my clone will also possess the same combat prowess as my main body. That would be truly badass. An expression of yearning appeared on his face as he spoke. Dabai, the clown, and Su Xiaolan all looked at him enviously. He then completely transformed into a puddle of water, drenching Dabai's entire body. Dabai, ha 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 ha. You didn't expect this, did you? This is the real me. Unlin, who had remained silent this entire time, suddenly chortled with glee as if his prank had succeeded. Dabai, You're going to lose me as your supreme mount, woof. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at the chortling Enlin, but she also heaved a sigh of relief. Enlin's current condition appeared to be quite normal, and he didn't suddenly go crazy like he would after absorbing the fire essence. Enlin turned his gaze toward the dark lightning dragon ball hovering in the air. He held the dragon ball in his hand and sensed the energy within it. This was an extremely pure type of lightning essence power. However, the system didn't give him any notifications about it. He thought about it for a moment before looking at Dabai, the clown, and Su Xiaolan. Who's interested in this dragon ball? This dark lightning dragon ball was not a normal weapon. Instead, it was a special energy carrier. Enlin didn't know how to use it, so he wanted to ask if anyone needed it. Dabai shook his head. I don't get along with lightning by nature. After all, I don't like to flex. The clown also wore an uninterested expression. I've never come into contact with lightning, so it's useless even if you give it to me. Su Xiaolan walked toward Enlin and stared at the dark lightning dragon ball with a contemplative expression. How about you give this dragon ball to me? It gives me a very familiar feeling, she suddenly said after a moment of silence. Enlin was dazed. He couldn't help but ask, Don't you like to play with fire? Why do you suddenly have feelings for lightning? Su Xiaolan also didn't understand. She shook her head and said, I just feel that this dragon ball seems to have some kind of connection with me. Also, the lightning essence contained within this dragon ball gives me a very familiar feeling. Enlin shrugged and handed the dark lightning dragon ball to Su Xiaolan. He didn't understand these mysterious words. However, since Su Xiaolan liked this dragon ball, then he'd give it to her. After resting on the huge floating rock for a while, they continued toward the next palace. To be honest, when they stood at the entrance of the Palace of Earth, they all felt a lot of pressure. The Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow palaces were the last 4 palaces in the Winter Dragon Tomb. At the same time, they were also the most difficult palaces. At least, this was the case based on the situation of the Palace of Yellow and Palace of Black. The red-haired male from the Palace of Yellow was at the Soul Formation final stage. Enlin only managed to win by a hair's breadth after using all of his trump cards and the power of his beast pets. The Horned Dragon from the Palace of Black was also at the Soul Formation final stage. However, because it possessed the power of the dragon tribe's bloodline, its power was even more terrifying than that of the red-haired male. Especially after it revealed its true dragon form, its domineering aura and its ability to summon the myriad lightning supreme purple-gold lightning showed that it was even more powerful than the red-haired male. It could be said that if Enlin didn't have the lightning manipulation technique, he would have been blasted into smithereens by the purple-gold lightning a long time ago. If the Tomb Guardian of the Palace of Black was more powerful than the Tomb Guardian of the Palace of Yellow, then it was very likely that the Tomb Guardian of the Palace of Earth was even more powerful than the Horned Dragon from the Palace of Black. Could they defeat an enemy like this? Enlin moistened his slightly parched throat and sent Gundam 1 and Gundam 2, who had already finished charging, to scout ahead. Creak, the door opened. Chapter 255. Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 strode into the Palace of Earth first and looked ahead cautiously without making any unnecessary movements. A silver-haired middle-aged man with dragon horns on his head sat on the main throne in the palace. He was dressed in a purple dragon robe, and his eyes were calm yet a little curious as he sized up the people walking into the Palace of Earth. Welcome to the Palace of Earth, all fated ones. A warm and magnetic voice sounded from the man's mouth, giving everyone a sense of comfort. Enlin didn't dare to let his guard down at the sight of this ordinary-looking yet extremely warm middle-aged man. Who knew if he was faking his friendly demeanor? Senior, is there anything good in your palace that we can get from there? Woof. Dabai was well-versed in Enlin's teachings and got straight to the point. The middle-aged man chuckled involuntarily. Who would have thought that even a dog would be so interesting among the fated ones? You've almost emptied the Winter Dragon Tomb of all the good stuff on your way here, And you're still not satisfied? Everyone was a little embarrassed upon hearing this. However, I really do have something good here. The man turned to look at everyone with a meaningful expression. However, this item cannot be obtained by force. If you want to obtain it, you have to win its heart. And Lin's eyes lit up. Don't we have to fight? That would be great. Nowadays, people advocate for civilized and harmonious cultivation, and those who use weapons are far too unfriendly. I didn't think that Senior would be so understanding. You really are a kindred spirit. The middle-aged man faltered slightly upon hearing this, but he was in agreement with Lin's idea of civilized and harmonious cultivation, so he nodded and continued. I have an immortal tool here called the Dragon Sparrow Sword. It was the weapon that Shen Yin used when she was still alive, and it can only be gifted to those who are fated with it. This sword has a spirit and is extremely difficult to tame. You can try to communicate with it and see if you can make it accept you as its master. He tossed a long sword into the air as he spoke. Instantly, the entire heaven and earth was filled with sword intent as the roars of dragons and the cries of phoenixes erupted into the heavens. The dragon sparrow sword's blade was snowy white and translucent, appearing holy and flawless. The two sides of its blade were completely different. One side was bright red, like a phoenix bathing in fire, while the other side was dark blue, like the thunder of a true dragon. Such two completely different edges were perfectly matched together, giving people a feeling of harmony and complementation. The dragon sparrow sword hovered in midair, emanating a peerless light of white, crimson, and blue. Lin and the others stared at it with wide eyes. Just this design and appearance alone was worth the price of a celestial artifact. The evil-slaying sword and realm-piercing nail were both immortal tools, but from the looks of it, they instantly looked downright pathetic. It had to be said that the temptation of an immortal artifact was very big, especially such a handsome immortal artifact. And Lin had never seen such a thing in his life. Everyone's eyes were burning with eagerness. Let me train him first, Woof. Dabai volunteered first and strode toward the dragon sparrow sword. The corner of its mouth curled up slightly, and a pair of round, jet-black eyes were filled with affection. It raised its proud and unyielding head and said softly, "Baby, follow me. I'll protect you well and be with you forever. I'll see the most beautiful scenery with you, visit the best brothels, and slay the most ferocious enemies with you. If you want, I can lick you every day, protect you every day, every day." Boom! Before it could finish its sentence, a bolt of lightning crashed toward Dabai, charring it to a crisp. Dabai opened its mouth, and white smoke exhaled from its mouth. Tears welled up in its eyes, and it appeared extremely aggrieved. "What? Even if you don't like my confession, you don't have to be so violent, Woof." Lightning crackled from the dragon sparrow sword, and it was clearly preparing to unleash a few more strikes. Dabai immediately fled in fear upon seeing this, not daring to provoke this hot-tempered immortal sword again. Dabai's strategy was a complete failure. And Lin didn't think that Dabai would choose this method to curry favor with the dragon sparrow sword, and he certainly didn't think that Dabai would say something so disgusting and disgusting. Goosebumps appeared all over Lin's body. If the dragon sparrow sword kept talking, Lin would want to beat it up, let alone strike it. "Let me try." The clown walked toward the dragon sparrow sword with a serious expression. He had a sincere expression on his face as he spoke in a clear voice. "Brother Dragon Sparrow, would you like to conquer the world with me? When I rule over the world, I'll grant you a bountiful life." Lin and Su Xiaolan shuddered upon hearing this. Where did he learn such a crappy line? The clown continued, "This metal staff was once my weapon, but for you, I'm willing to practice my sword. I'm willing to become a monkey sword immortal." He didn't even want his weapon anymore. As expected, the dragon sparrow's sword had completely won over the clown's heart. The dragon sparrow sword let out a crisp ringing sound as wisps of crimson flames appeared in the air. The clown's entire body tensed up, thinking that he was going to suffer the same brutal punishment as Dabai. However, he soon discovered that he was wrong. The crimson flames formed a series of words in the air. They were trying to speak. The clown, Anlin, and Su Xiaolan's eyes all lit up, thinking that they had a chance. Words slowly appeared. "Thank you for your kindness, Brother Monkey, but don't call me Brother Dragon Sparrow. I'm a woman. Also, you're too ugly, so you don't fit my standards of beauty. You should just play with your silver staff." The flaming words slowly burned in the air. Everyone was dumbstruck as they stared at the words written on them. Boom! The words, "You're too ugly," were like the most ferocious attack, and the clown was completely dumbstruck. This was a spiritual attack that was even more fearsome than a spell technique. Anlin, Su Xiaolan, and even Dabai, who had just been struck by lightning, all turned to look at the clown with sympathy in their eyes. The flames gradually dissipated. The clown wobbled as he turned around and left. Su Xiaolan was a little concerned at the sight of the clown's ashen expression. "Anlin, is the clown going to be all right?" Anlin waved his hand. "He'll be fine, he needs time to get used to it." Both Dabai and the clown had failed, so it was time for his master to redeem their dignity. From the dragon sparrow sword's reply, it was clear that this sword was a fan of good looks. Anlin thought about it for a moment. "I'm so handsome, so I'll be a lot more stable this time." With this in mind, a confident smile appeared on his face. Just as he was about to take a step forward, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind, and he stopped in his tracks. "No. I can't go up so quickly." According to normal storylines, the person who goes up the fastest is usually the cannon fodder. The main character is usually the last to appear. Anlin turned to Su Xiaolan with a warm smile. "Su Xiaolan, ladies first. You go first." "Huh." Su Xiaolan blinked her clear eyes before nodding. She didn't think too much of it and walked toward the dragon sparrow sword. Anlin was still full of confidence. This dragon sparrow sword is a female sword, and like repels like, opposites attract. This is the law of heaven and earth. I'm the most handsome person here, so I'm going to get this dragon sparrow sword no matter what." Su Xiaolan walked toward the hovering dragon sparrow sword and was a little hesitant. She hadn't figured out how to communicate with the dragon sparrow sword yet, so she didn't know what to say. "Hello." She greeted him in a clear and melodious voice. Whoosh! The dragon sparrow sword also let out a light ringing, as if it was also greeting her. Su Xiaolan heaved a sigh of relief. It looked like the dragon sparrow sword had a good temper. She couldn't help but extend a finger toward the snowy, translucent blade of the sword. It felt quite nice. It was very smooth, and there was even a hint of coolness to it. "Wow. So perverted. You've only greeted me and you're already groping me, woof." Dabai couldn't help but grumble. Anlin felt like something was amiss. This was because the dragon sparrow sword let out a clear ringing sound as Su Xiaolan stroked it. The sound was extremely joyful. Golden flames suddenly appeared on Su Xiaolan's fingertip. "What's going on? My aura has been activated?" Su Xiaolan's eyes widened as she stared at the golden flames on her fingertips with incredulity. Why was the dragon sparrow sword able to activate the power within her body? It clearly hadn't accepted her as its master yet. The middle-aged man sitting on the main seat of the palace abruptly stood up with an expression of shock on his face. Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged. The dragon sparrow sword soared into the sky with an azure dragon revolving around its blade. The majestic roar of a dragon was like a bolt of divine thunder. The projection of a phoenix danced in the air, releasing a dazzling light. The dragon sparrow sword has awakened. She really has accepted me as its master. The middle-aged man's body trembled with excitement. Anlin was completely dumbstruck. Holy F***ck, the sword has accepted me as its master just like that? Chapter 256. No, there's something wrong with this plot development. Anlin stared at the dragon sparrow sword in the sky with an expression of disbelief. His heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. Right at this moment, he came to a realization. He realized a very practical problem, and that was that the same sex didn't necessarily repel each other, and the opposite sex didn't necessarily attract each other. Where did gays come from? Where did lesbians come from? This dragon sparrow sword was a lesbian. This answer instantly crushed him. In the end, was he going to miss out on such a cool sword? Hurry up and release a drop of blood essence, the middle-aged man said to the dazed Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan slid her finger without hesitation, and a dazzling drop of blood essence floated in the air. This drop of blood essence, which contained the bloodline of the divine phoenix, automatically flew toward the dragon sparrow sword and finally fused with it. Whoosh! Another carefree ringing sound rang out, and the phenomenon between heaven and earth began to dissipate. The dragon sparrow sword descended from the sky and obediently nestled next to Su Xiaolan, emitting a joyful wung 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 sound. The middle-aged man excitedly made his way to Su Xiaolan's side. Who would have thought that the dragon sparrow sword would actually recognize a master? He said with a trembling voice. This is too astonishing, too unbelievable. He knew very well how proud the dragon sparrow sword was, and how difficult it was to tame it. Even if a mighty figure of the Return to Void stage came, it wouldn't necessarily show any respect. However, such a ferocious and unruly immortal sword actually voluntarily recognized the woman in front of him as its master. My name is Long Ao. May I ask what your name is? The middle-aged man asked excitedly. He didn't want to say his name earlier because he felt that there was no need to exchange names with these people. In any case, the final outcome would be him leaving in defeat, so there was no point in wasting his breath. However, he never would have thought that the dragon sparrow sword would actually recognize a master. This completely refreshed his worldview, and it also made him curious about the woman in front of him. Oh, my name is Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan nodded. When Enlin heard the middle-aged man's name, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he said unwillingly, Senior Long Outyan, do you have any other good stuff here? Long Ao was about to continue talking to Su Xiaolan. At this moment, when he heard Enlin's words, he immediately shook his head and said, This little friend, my name is Long Ao, not Long Outyan. He thought for a moment and his eyes lit up. But the name Long Outyan sounds good. I'll call myself Long Outyan from now on. Senior Long Outyan, you still haven't told me if there are any other treasures here. Enlin nodded with an expression that was as if it was as expected. Long Outyan shook his head with a smile. This dragon sparrow sword is the only thing left in the Palace of Earth. It was once Xin Yin's sword. I thought that until the day I died, I wouldn't be able to see her recognize a new master. Who would have thought that I would see the scene that I've always dreamed of? Tears welled up in his eyes, and he sighed with emotion. He paused for a moment before continuing, If you want to obtain Xin Yin's bloodline inheritance and treasures, then go to the Palace of Heaven. However, I hope that Ms. Su Xiaolan will stop here. I don't want to see the dragon sparrow sword become a widow after only a few days of hard work. Su Xiaolan shook her head with a determined expression. I have a feeling that the Palace of Heaven has some kind of connection with me. I have a very strong feeling that if I don't go there, I will regret it for the rest of my life. For some reason, after hearing Su Xiaolan's words, Enlin had a stronger feeling that this winter dragon tomb had to have been opened by Su Xiaolan's family. Long Outyan's eyes lit up upon hearing Su Xiaolan's reply. You? What's your relationship with Shenyin? Su Xiaolan shook her head. I don't know. I've never heard my family mention her. A hint of disappointment flashed across Long Outyan's face. Enlin suggested, Senior Long Outyan, why don't you come with us to the Palace of Heaven? You can protect Su Xiaolan. That way, the dragon sparrow sword won't have to worry about becoming a widow. Long Outyan, do you really think I'm one of your own? Enlin looked at Long Outyan with a sincere expression. Am I not? Long Outyan replied with a serious expression. Which part of me doesn't look like a villain? I'll change. Lin's eyes lit up. Senior Long Outyen, please tell us what kind of dangers we will encounter in the Palace of Heaven and what kind of enemies we will be tortured to death by. Long Outyen, I'm very easy to talk to, but please don't insult my intelligence. To tell you the truth, I actually don't know what kind of enemies there are in the Palace of Heaven. Even we are forbidden from entering that place. All I know is that the inheritance and treasures of Shin Yin's bloodline are all there. Lin and the others knew that there was nothing they could do. They would only know the exact situation in the Palace of Heaven after going there. Long Outyen cupped his fists in a salute. I, Long Outyen, have been trapped here for over 8,000 years because I offended Shin Yin. I had thought that I would never be able to escape. However, you have successfully made the Dragon Sparrow Sword accept me as its master, and I have regained my freedom. I will always remember this kindness. If we meet again in the future, I will do my best to assist you. A towering aura erupted from Long Outyen's body as he spoke. This was an aura of unparalleled power and confidence. Life has always been filled with helplessness. Everything in the mortal world has turned into nothingness in the blink of an eye. I look on as the winds and clouds move, and I am proud to be free and unfettered. Fellow cultivators, I'll be taking my leave first. If the heavens want to suppress me, I will defy them. The day we meet again will be the day that I, Long Outyen, become renowned across the entire continent. Long Outyen was full of heroic spirit as he displayed his majestic and glorious figure to Lin and the others. Then, he stepped through the air and left. Lin's lips twitched upon seeing this, and he felt as if tens of thousands of mythological beasts were stamping over his heart. Speaking of which, did this name awaken some sort of attribute in him? Who doesn't know your name, Long Outyen? You've been renowned across the entire continent for a long time. In any case, Long Outyen had finally left. Lin calmed himself down and turned to look at Su Xiaolan, who was playing with the Dragon Sparrow Sword. The Dragon Sparrow Sword flew around Su Xiaolan like a mischievous little girl. Su Xiaolan was burning her with flames, but she was controlling Su Xiaolan's flames in reverse, making the flames dance around the sword like fairies. Sigh, she's beautiful, and her sword is beautiful. What a perfect combination. Lin shook his head and sighed. He pulled out the evil-slaying sword and looked at the inky black blade. Look at the Dragon Sparrow Sword, it can still play with its master. What about you? F***ck, you can't even develop a spirit. Tell me, what's the difference between you and that ugly chaotic alloy brick? Both of you are so dark-skinned, are you two brothers? The evil-slaying sword remained silent in Lin's hand. Sigh, you're a top-notch immortal tool, and even Emperor Ziwei has taken a liking to you. Why are you so disappointing now? Sigh, Master is too weak. I don't want to talk. A cold voice suddenly sounded in Lin's mind, causing his body to tremble with fear. Wait. Where did this voice come from? Lin looked at the evil-slaying sword in his hand, and an extremely excited speculation surfaced in his mind. Little Xie, is that you? Are you talking? Evil-slaying sword. The inky black evil-slaying sword remained completely still in Lin's hand. Lin blinked before continuing, if you don't say anything, I'm going to plunge you into a pile of cow dung to have a good time. F***ck off. A feminine cry exploded in Lin's mind. This cry was quite lethal, and Lin felt as if his mind had been struck by a bolt of lightning. However, he was ecstatic instead of enraged. Ha 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 ha. Look, my sword has developed a spirit as well. Lin's exclamation drew the attention of Su Xiaolan, Dabai, and Xiao Chou. Lin tossed the evil-slaying sword into the air. Little Xie, perform a sword dance. The evil-slaying sword flew through the air in a parabola before falling to the ground with a clang right before everyone's eyes. Su Xiaolan, Lin. Chapter 257. Little Xie, give me some face, Lin pleaded. The evil-slaying sword remained motionless like a piece of scrap metal. Unlin blushed as he glanced at the dumbstruck crowd. F***ck, so awkward. Haha, it's fine. Perhaps your sword is too tired and doesn't want to move. Su Xiaolan immediately offered words of consolation upon seeing Enlin's expression. She didn't know whether Enlin's evil-slaying sword had a sword spirit or not, but she felt that it was best not to continue such an awkward situation. Thus, she took the initiative to defend Enlin. Enlin nodded with disappointment and picked up the evil-slaying sword. He suddenly recalled something. It was a mission from the system. Stage 1 Divine Weapon Origin Energy, Condition, Nurture a Weapon Spirit. His evil-slaying sword clearly had a spirit, and it could even insult its master. Why didn't it indicate mission completion? Xiaolan, I want to ask if my evil-slaying sword can speak counts as nurturing a spirit? Enlin asked in confusion. Su Xiaolan shook her head. Of course not. The nurturing of an immortal sword refers to the fact that the sword's spirit can detach itself from the body of the sword and materialize a body. The fact that the immortal sword can speak only means that the weapon possesses intelligence and is in the spirit condensation stage. Enlin was a little disappointed to hear this. He had heard of countless ways to nurture a spirit in a weapon, but it all differed from sword to sword. Who knew which one this evil-slaying sword was good for? Little Xie, how can I nurture a spirit in your sword? Enlin persisted in his question. The evil-slaying sword remained motionless and didn't respond at all. Enlin, all right, he resigned to his fate. This was a cold and aloof sword. Its stupid master didn't deserve to speak to it. After resting for a while, everyone set off toward the last palace. The most mysterious and terrifying place in the Winter Dragon Tomb, the Palace of Heaven. The first 2 batches of cultivators who entered the Winter Dragon Tomb never made it out again after entering the Palace of Heaven. Enlin stared at the palace that was glowing with a holy white light, and his heart was filled with unease. The light seemed to be telling him all the beauty of the world. It was an irresistible charm. After staring at it for a long time, he would have the urge to rush into the palace to find out what was going on. The Palace of Heaven was extremely huge. It was more than 10 times larger than an ordinary palace. The gigantic floating rock that supported the Palace of Heaven looked like a lifelike dragon's head from above. It faintly exuded a supreme majesty. Same old rules, we'll let the 2 Gundams take the lead. If the enemy is too powerful, we'll run, Enlin instructed. Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 pushed open the door and entered. Enlin and the others followed behind them with tense bodies. Why isn't anyone here? Enlin was startled by the scene before him. The interior decorations of the palace couldn't be considered luxurious. It could only be said to be simple and elegant. There was a faint scent of wood, but it didn't have that domineering air of supremacy. In the center was a pillar of white light that shot into the sky. That was probably the source of the Palace of Heaven's holy light. From the outside, this holy light was extremely alluring. However, from the inside, this holy light gave off a sense of peace and tranquility. Before everyone had a chance to investigate, a figure materialized in front of the pillar of light. Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 suddenly activated the Ion Deprivation Protection Formation. A blue barrier of light enshrouded everyone within. A white streak of light as sharp as a saber suddenly swept toward them. Boom! The white streak of light collided with the Ion Deprivation Protection Formation, and energy swept forth in all directions in a frenzy. The blue barrier of light trembled violently for the first time, as if it was on the verge of collapse. This attack caught everyone off guard. Thankfully, Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 were robots, so they were able to react quickly and calmly. Thus, they were able to block this attack. That's an interesting puppet. Was it created by the Purple Star? An ethereal and distant voice that sounded like the sounds of nature suddenly rang out. The figure in front of the pillar of light descended to the ground. It was a tall and slender woman in a white dress. Lin turned to look at the woman. Her features were elegant and serene, as if she were a celestial maiden. She had a pair of silver dragon horns on her head, which were so intricate that it was mesmerizing to look at them. Lin only took one glance before he found himself unable to tear his eyes away. These dragon horns were like the most perfect artwork in this world. They were even more alluring than the woman's exquisitely beautiful face. He felt like he was going to become a horncon if he continued to stare at them. Not only Lin, but even Su Xiaolan, Dabai, and Xiao Chou couldn't help but stare at the pair of dragon horns. They were even fantasizing about whether that pair of flawless dragon horns was the reward for entering the palace of heaven. If they really were dragon horns, they wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. Instead, they felt like it was only natural. Have you seen enough? The woman in the white dress wasn't surprised to see everyone staring at her dragon horns. Instead, she smiled lightly. Yes, Senior. May I ask if the reward for entering the palace of heaven is dragon horns? Lin asked with a respectful expression. That's right, even though Long Outyen had said that the reward would be something like Shen Yin's bloodline inheritance or some sort of treasure, Lin still hoped that the reward would be this pair of dragon horns. That's not it. The woman in the white dress wasn't enraged. Instead, she replied with a smile, It's something that's not inferior to this pair of dragon horns in the slightest. However, in order to obtain it, you'll have to undergo some trials. What trials? Lin asked curiously. The first trial is a trial of combat strength. The woman in the white dress materialized a sword of wind with a warm smile on her face. However, the killing intent emanating from her body was as cold as ice, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Gundam 1, Gundam 2. Lin yelled. Whoosh. The woman in the white dress stepped forward and instantly appeared in front of the two Gundams before slashing down with her wind sword. One of the Gundams had just activated its ionic deprivation protection formation when the woman in the white dress sliced a gaping hole into it. The other Gundam's lightsaber was already slashing toward the woman's waist. It was as fast as lightning, like a flash of light. The woman's slender fingers formed the shape of a dragon's claw as she gripped the air. Crack! An extremely mystical power froze the space around her and stopped the Gundam's light sword in its tracks. She stepped back and slashed her wind sword at an even faster speed toward the Gundam in front of her. Then, a scene that left Lin and the others in shock unfolded. It was clearly a sword formed from condensed energy and didn't rely on any divine weapons. However, an ear-piercing screech of metal erupted as the wind sword collided with the Gundam's body. In Lin's eyes, the seemingly indestructible Gundam was sliced open by the wind sword amid a shower of sparks and sparks. The Gundam flew back as if it had been struck by a heavy blow. The other Gundam pounced toward the woman again. The woman turned around and punched it in the abdomen. Boom! Heaven and earth tremored violently. Lin saw the space around the Gundam's abdomen begin to warp and crumble. Countless cracks instantly appeared on the Gundam's silver metal armor, and its body flew back like a cannonball. Lin drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. Even though the woman in the white dress had concealed her aura, only a return to void stage mighty figure would be able to warp and shatter space. Run! Lin yelled without any hesitation. Su Xiaolan, Dabai, and Xiao Chou retreated toward the palace gate without any hesitation. However, in the next instant, the woman had already appeared before Xiao Chou and unleashed a fist. The terrifying power behind her fist sent Xiao Chou flying through the air as he threw up a mouthful of blood. She then raised a hand toward Dabai, and Dabai felt as if a gargantuan mountain were crashing down upon him. He felt as if his bones were about to shatter, and his body was completely submerged into the ground. Xiao Chou, Dabai. Lin roared as wings of wind materialized on his back. He was just about to unleash his origin energy of the netherworld to fight to the death. However, the white figure appeared before him in the blink of an eye before unleashing a palm toward his chest. The attack was too fast, and there was no way he could evade it. Lin's chest caved in from the force of the palm, and his internal organs were pulverized as he threw up a large mouthful of blood. Lin! A familiar yell sounded. Su Xiaolan wielded her dragon sparrow sword and slashed toward the woman in the white dress without any regard for her own safety. The dragon sparrow sword appeared, and the cries of dragons and phoenixes erupted throughout the entire space. A crimson and blue sword projection swept through the air for 100 feet before crashing down upon the woman in the white dress with unparalleled might. Dragon sparrow! The woman in the white dress expression shifted as a hint of confusion appeared in her bright eyes. Boom! Flames and lightning exploded forth, pulverizing the ground within a radius of 100 feet, and a portion of the entire palace had collapsed as a result. Su Xiaolan didn't even look at the outcome of the battle. She turned toward Lin in an attempt to escape with him. However, the space before her suddenly shattered, and the woman in the white dress emerged from within before turning toward Su Xiaolan with a scrutinizing expression. "What's your name?" the woman asked in an ethereal and pleasant voice. Su Xiaolan bit down on her lower lip and panted heavily as she stared at the woman in front of her. There was a look of despair on her face. The disparity in power between them was simply too vast. In the face of such power, even escaping was an extravagant hope, she thought to herself for a moment before giving up on resisting. "My name is Su Xiaolan." The woman in the white dress paused momentarily before a graceful smile appeared on her face. "Hello, my name is Serene." Chapter 258. What? You're saying you're Serene? Su Xiaolan's eyes widened in shock, and her speech became a little sluggish. Lin, Xiao Chou, and Dabai were also staring at the woman in a white dress with dumbstruck expressions. Serene? What a joke! Wasn't this Winter Dragon tomb where winged dragon Serene was buried? If the tomb keeper of the Palace of Heaven was Serene, then didn't that mean that she had built a tomb for herself and was playing as the tomb keeper? What kind of joke was that? The woman in a white dress nodded with an earnest expression as she replied to Su Xiaolan's question. "I am Serene, the owner of this dragon tomb." Su Xiaolan, Lin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou. The woman in a white dress waved a hand through the air, and a massive healing spell formation appeared to heal everyone's injuries. The rules for this combat prowess trial are that you'll pass if you can last 10 breaths of time against me. From the moment I attacked to the moment I started conversing with Su Xiaolan, a total of 12 seconds had passed. Congratulations on passing the combat prowess trial, the woman who referred to herself as Serene said with a smile. Lin and the others finally heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. This Serene was a return-to-void stage mighty figure. It would be impossible for them to defeat her. Just thinking about the battle that had just taken place gave them a sense of lingering fear. The healing spell formation continued, and Lin and the others' injuries were significantly alleviated, allowing them to stand up again. The 2 Gundams also returned to their storage rings and began the arduous process of charging vital stones to automatically heal their injuries. After so many battles, the 2 puppets had already absorbed tens of thousands of spirit stones. Thankfully, Lin was a tycoon. Otherwise, his heart would be aching to death. Just as everyone was reluctantly accepting the fact that the woman in a white dress was Serene spoke again. She was still talking to Su Xiaolan, and it was clear that she was very interested in Su Xiaolan. "My little friend Su Xiaolan, can I use a spell technique on you?" Su Xiaolan asked cautiously. "What kind of spell?" "A bloodline appraisal spell technique. To tell you the truth, I think you and I are relative." With K.'s pride, there's no way she would accept a cultivator of the spirit-nurturing stage as her master, unless she has a familiar scent on her. Serene spoke in an extremely gentle voice, and there was a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Su Xiaolan pondered for a while before nodding in agreement. With Shen Yin's power, if she wanted to harm her, she wouldn't be able to defend herself even if she used some kind of spell technique. Shin-in taking the initiative to make a request was a sign of respect for her. She was also curious about the connection between her and the Palace of Heaven, so there was really no reason for her to refuse. Enlin, Dabai, and Xiao Chao's eyes also widened in shock. They had previously speculated that this dragon tomb was owned by Su Xiaolan's family, but who would have thought that even the owner of the tomb, winged dragon Shin-in, would want to confirm this as well. A red glow appeared on Xin Yin's slender finger, and she gently tapped it towards Su Xiaolan's forehead. Su Xiaolan's eyes were slightly closed, and her eyelashes trembled. There was a hint of nervousness on her petite face. Enlin stared intently at Xin Yin's expression, watching as her expression changed from one of indifference to one of confusion, and then to one of realization. Shin-in lowered her hand, and the spell technique was completed. There was no earth-shattering commotion, and the entire process was extremely uneventful. Su Xiaolan opened her eyes and looked at the elegant woman before her with a hint of nervousness, but also a hint of anticipation. Xin Yin's eyes lit up, and her expression became even more gentle as she looked at Su Xiaolan. "Child, I know everything. Let me tell you the truth." Enlin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou knew that they had a chance upon hearing Xin Yin's words. Shin-in continued in a gentle voice. "My sister's son's daughter's 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 son's daughter's 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 son's daughter's daughter is you." Su Xiaolan's mouth gaped open. Enlin, Xiao Chou, and Dabai's expressions all turned to stone. Shin-in explained again. "In other words, your father's mother's 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 father's mother's sister is me." Enlin, Xiao Chou, and Dabai continued to be petrified. Su Xiaolan's lips trembled. She knew that she and Shin-in were relatives. But with such a terrifying seniority, how was she supposed to address this relative, Granny? "Granny Shin-in." Su Xiaolan greeted her timidly. Xin Yin's pretty face turned cold. "Call me Big Sister." Su Xiaolan was given a fright, but she had no choice but to comply. Big Sister Shin-in, after saying that, she began to realize a very serious problem. She called Shin-in Big Sister? Then why was her mother called Shin-in? Su Xiaolan. Enlin finally came to his senses upon hearing this. He was extremely shocked by this revelation, and at the same time, he couldn't help but grumble internally. Shin-in definitely hadn't even seen the son of the daughter 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 of the what's with this sigh? You possess the bloodline of our dragon tribe, and it's the purest direct bloodline. Your mother is most likely the successor of the Vermilion Bird sect, so you possess the bloodline of the divine phoenix. Such terrifying bloodline potential. This must be one of the reasons why the Dragon Sparrow sect chose you. Shin-in nodded emphatically. She then seemed to recall something, and a smile appeared on her face. Looks like this really is fate. When I forged the Dragon Sparrow sword, I wanted to forge a divine weapon that could perfectly combine the powers of the dragon and the phoenix. In the end, the Dragon Sparrow sword was forged, but I wasn't a good match for it. She turned to Su Xiaolan again as she spoke. Who would have thought that it would encounter you after 8,000 years? Perhaps you, who possess the bloodline of the dragon and the phoenix, will be able to unleash the true power of the Dragon Sparrow sword. Fate is too wonderful for words. Enlin lamented. Su Xiaolan stared at the Dragon Sparrow sword in her hand with a dazed expression. That's right, all of this was too much of a coincidence. Was this fate? The dragon sparrow sword flew out of her hand and circled around Shen-Yin with an expression full of longing and reluctance, as if objecting to her statement that they weren't a good match. Shen-Yin caressed the dragon sparrow sword with a faint smile on her face. She looked at Su Xiaolan and seemed to have figured something out. The power of your dragon tribe bloodline has yet to be awakened, mainly because your divine phoenix bloodline was awakened too early, so it suppressed the awakening of the dragon tribe bloodline. So be it. Let me help you awaken the power of your dragon tribe bloodline, and I'll also give you my inheritance and the treasures I left here. Su Xiaolan was instantly rooted to the spot upon hearing this. Anlin was indignant and raised his hand in protest. Big Sister Shenine, shouldn't we first conduct a few rounds of tests to fairly select the candidates? Shen-Yin chuckled. There was originally a bloodline test and a heart test, but I've taken a liking to little sister Su Xiaolan, so I'm giving it to her. What, do you have a problem with that? That's not fair, Wolf. Dabai wailed with tears streaming down his face. He had wandered around the graveyard and risked his life for nothing. He refused to accept this. I opened this graveyard, and the treasures are mine. Everything is up to me. Shen-Yin raised her chin slightly and looked at everyone with a disdainful expression. Her voice was imbued with a peerless dragon might as she spoke in a cold voice. Anlin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou shuddered. They were speechless. That's right, she was the one who opened this graveyard, so what was wrong with giving the inheritance to a relative? Everyone lowered their heads slightly, bowing their heads to their ancient relatives. Chapter 259. Shen-Yin was treating Su Xiaolan so well that Su Xiaolan was a little at a loss as to what to do. She had even waived all of the tests and was handing over the inheritance to her in such a generous manner. This was like a free lunch falling from the sky. Don't worry, I'll help you activate the power of your dragon tribe bloodline first, Shen-Yin said with a smile. Her expression was filled with the doting love of a senior toward a junior. Su Xiaolan nodded. Even her father was unable to resolve the issue regarding her dragon tribe bloodline. She didn't think that she would be able to resolve this issue here in the Winter Dragon Tomb. This was most likely the greatest blessing that she had ever received. Shen Yin's eyes turned golden, and a peerless dragon's might emanated from her body, as if she were a goddess looking down upon everyone. A massive golden spell formation appeared on the ground, encompassing the entire floating continent. The vital energy of heaven and earth began to surge as countless golden runes appeared in the air, revolving around Su Xiaolan. Shen-Yin uttered a series of hand seals as her fingers moved through the air in a nimble manner. Ancestral Dragon's divine might, break all restrictions. Shen-Yin finally said something that Anlin could understand before pointing two fingers toward Su Xiaolan's glabella. Boom! The spell formation quickly activated as countless runes surged into Su Xiaolan's body in a frenzy. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly as she let loose a pained moan. 15 minutes later, something seemed to have awakened within her. Su Xiaolan's aura transformed into the aura of a queen that reigned supreme over all things. Her eyes had turned a pure golden color, and a pair of phoenix wings spread open on her back. There was also an azure dragon winding around her curvaceous body, making her appear even more noble and inviolable. Anlin almost knelt down upon seeing Su Xiaolan in this state. This was a super-evolved version of Su Xiaolan. She was so dazzling. Soon, Su Xiaolan's eyes turned black and white again, and her aura began to recede. Meanwhile, Shen Yin's body swayed slightly, as if she had overexerted herself. Su Xiaolan hurried over to support Shen-Yin with a grateful yet nervous expression. "Thank you, big sister Shen-Yin. Are you all right?" Shen-Yin shook her head. "It's fine. Let's begin the next step of the inheritance. I will give you my knowledge, comprehension, and the last bit of bloodline power I have left." After saying that, she ignored Su Xiaolan's reaction and pointed her finger at Su Xiaolan's forehead again. This time, the inheritance was much more low-key. There were almost no ripples in the surroundings. Time passed by bit, and Lin laid on top of Dabai, not knowing what to do. He could only silently admire the two beauties who were standing still. "Hey Dabai, these two women, which one do you like more?" Lin suddenly asked out of nowhere. Dabai was just amazed by Su Xiaolan's full power. At this time, he replied without hesitation, "Of course it's Su Xiaolan, woof." Bang! Dabai's head was smashed angrily. "I'll give you one more chance," Lin said in a cold voice. "Dabai." "Shanine." Lin nodded with satisfaction. As a beast pet, how could he like the same woman as boss? Just as the two of them were joking around, Su Xiaolan's inheritance had already concluded. Shen Yin lowered her finger from Su Xiaolan's forehead with a relieved expression on her face. She raised her finger, and ripples spread through the air. A translucent, snow-white ring emerged from thin air before being gently pinched between her fingers. She picked up Su Xiaolan's delicate hand and slowly slipped the ring onto her finger. White holy light shone upon the two of them, creating a circle on the ground that separated them from the outside world. It was as if the two of them were the only people left in this world. Shen Yin's smile was extremely beautiful and natural. Su Xiaolan's face was slightly flushed with trepidation. The two peerless beauties, in the magnificent palace, under the holy and solemn light, successfully completed the transfer of the rings. Lin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou stared blankly at this scene. They felt that it was so beautiful and harmonious, and they felt as if something was about to awaken in their hearts. Lin quickly came to his senses, and he suddenly had a feeling that Su Xiaolan was about to be taken away from him. Fortunately, the ring transfer ceremony concluded very quickly, and the holy light that had appeared out of nowhere also dissipated. Big Sister Shen Yin. Su Xiaolan stared at the woman before her with a slightly entranced expression. Not only had Shen Yin awakened her bloodline and given her an immortal tool, but she had also given her a lifetime of enlightenment, knowledge, and even the last wisp of her bloodline power to her. Even now, she still felt like she was in a dream. What had she done for Shen Yin to treat her so well? Shen Yin merely smiled and looked at everyone before speaking in a gentle voice. "Would you all be interested in hearing a story?" "Yes, of course." Lin and the others nodded in unison. They knew that they would definitely be slapped to death if they said they weren't interested. A reminiscent expression appeared on Shen Yin's face, and her expression became even more gentle, as if she were a gentlewoman from the Jiangnan region. "Alright, then I'll tell you a story. It's about me." Lin obediently brought out small stools from his storage ring and distributed them to everyone so that they could sit and listen. Everyone sat up straight and looked at Shen Yin with expressions that said, "I'm ready. Please begin your performance, Big Boss." Shen Yin's lips twitched slightly, and she felt as if the atmosphere had been ruined. However, as expected of a mighty figure like Shen Yin, she quickly regained her composure and began to narrate the story. However, to everyone's surprise, what came out of her mouth was not words, but a series of incredibly beautiful syllables. A beautiful melody floated in the air. This was the sound of nature, the most beautiful song. A series of images appeared in everyone's minds as they listened to Shen Yin's song. These weren't just images, but images that were imbued with a person's memories, emotions, and even enlightenment. They saw the dazzling dragon court deep in the ocean, and they saw a little girl who was still in her infancy. Her name was Shen Yin. Lin didn't understand what Shen Yin was singing, but he could clearly sense the innocence imbued within her voice. Shen Yin was obedient and adorable. She had a pair of perfect dragon horns that all of her brethren were extremely envious of, and she also possessed the purest bloodline of the ancestral dragon. She was born with golden eyes and a body that reigned supreme among her brethren. Her cultivation progressed at a rapid pace, and she soon evolved from a WRM to a cloud dragon, then a horned dragon. Her beauty was exquisite, and her power was unmatched among her peers. She was the most dazzling pearl in the dragon court, and even the Dragon King had nothing but praise for her. She was referred to as the Heavenly Dragon Maiden. Her singing gradually became more and more high-spirited. Shen Yin traveled the Tai Chu continent, and her extraordinary strength and breathtaking beauty made the title of Heavenly Dragon Maiden renowned throughout the entire continent. She was not a gentle and weak woman. On the contrary, throughout this journey, she had been resolute in killing, exterminating evil and protecting the Tao. The number of evil sects that she had uprooted was innumerable, and her cultivation also grew with each battle she fought. She traveled west and entered the Kingdom of the Nine States. In the Kingdom of the Nine States, she was targeted by her nemesis, the Qing Huan sect. The Qing Huan sect deployed 8 soul formation stage elders to set up a killing formation to trap her. This formation was extremely powerful, and it could trap and kill any cultivator below the return to void stage. Even though Shen Yin's cultivation base was very high, she was still below the return to void stage, so she could only be exhausted to death. This was a hopeless situation for her. However, it was under such circumstances that a man as dazzling as a phoenix suddenly appeared in her life. The top disciple of the Vermilion Bird sect, Dongfang Ming. Chapter 260. Dongfang Ming's white robes fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were as dazzling as the stars in the night sky. He could summon the great void true flames with just a wave of his hand, and with every step he took, the entire heaven and earth transformed into a boundless sea of flames for his use. Shen Yin had never seen such a dazzling man before. He was like a monarch of flames, capable of incinerating the heavens and boiling the seas. He was invincible. The 8 soul formation stage demonic cultivators couldn't last more than 3 breaths before they were incinerated into ashes by the boundless great void true flames. You have a vendetta against the Qing Huan sect? They deployed half of their forces to kill you. In contrast to his arrogant demeanor, the man's voice was particularly gentle. A faint blush appeared on Shen Yin's face, but her bright eyes stared directly at the man before her, not for any other reason than the fact that he was simply too handsome. What a coincidence! My mission is to destroy the Qing Huan sect. Shall we go there together? Dongfang Ming smiled again. Shen Yin nodded vigorously. This was the first time they had spoken to each other, and it was a simple and direct conversation that connected their fates. Qing Huan sect. The Heavenly Dragon Maiden confessed her love amid a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Dongfang Ming, be my Tao partner. Why? Dongfang Ming was startled. Because you're handsome. Dongfang Ming. Because you saved me. Dongfang Ming shook his head. I don't need someone to repay me with their body. A Tao partner is a lifelong event, and it's not something to be trifled with. I can't make a decision without spending over 100 years together. All right, then I'll be with you for 100 years first. Dongfang Ming. Her voice began to become gentle and mellow, like a gentle breeze caressing one's cheeks, or like a lover's soft moan. Time flew by, and the sea turned into a rock. Shen Yin chased after a drifting dandelion in a sea of dandelions. Lin and the others saw the gentle expression in Dongfang Ming's eyes. Shen Yin strolled along the beach as the sun set. Her pristine white toes sank into the golden sand as she hummed a moving song. Dongfang Ming picked up an extremely beautiful seashell and gave it to Shen Yin before grabbing onto her hand. Lin and the others could feel the warmth of Dongfang Ming's hand and the love in his eyes. Xiao Ming, I plan to forge a celestial artifact that contains the power of a true dragon and a heavenly phoenix for our child. We're not Taoist companions yet, and you're already thinking about what weapons our children will use? Aya, it's only a matter of time. Half of the 100-year promise has already passed. The 2 of them roamed the 9 states, looking for materials to forge weapons. In order to forge this immortal weapon to perfection, the 2 of them even sacrificed their own bloodline power to fuse into the weapon. On the day that the dragon sparrow sword was completed, the true dragon and heavenly phoenix intertwined in mid-air, and a phenomenon of heaven and earth instantly took place. Xiao Ming, hug this sword as if you are hugging our child. After all, this sword has the aura of our bloodline. Then do we still want to have children? Ah! You scoundrel, you finally admit that I'm your Tao companion? Fool, if I didn't treat you as my Tao companion, only an idiot would waste 80 years to accompany you. Shenin, in another 20 years, I'll go to the Dragon Court and marry you. Alright, I'll wait for you. Shen Yin's singing voice suddenly changed. An extremely fearful emotion began to appear in her voice. A series of scenes that she didn't want to recall began to appear in her mind. The failed Tao integration stage product of the Purple Star Realm, the Godfiend of Six Paths, led 100,000-strong ghostly army toward the Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas. The ghostly army wreaked havoc, and the East Sea was transformed into a bloody ghostly realm. Shin Yin looked on at this despairing scene, only to find Dongfang Ming standing in front of her again. He was still as dazzling as ever. His entire body was like the sun, illuminating Shin Yin's entire world, just like when they had first met. But this time it was different from when they first met. This was the day that they would be parted forever. The Godfiend of Six Paths was extremely powerful, and Dongfang Ming had to expend all of his power in order to defeat the Godfiend of Six Paths and completely crush the Ghost Tribe army. Dongfang Ming lay in Shin Yin's arms. His aura was like a candle in the wind, but the gentle expression on his face remained unchanged. Shin Yin, I've invented a bloodline transplant spell technique that can transfer my power to you. No. You have to live. Have you forgotten our promise? There's only 2 years left, there's only 2 years left. The young woman sobbed with extreme grief. The phoenix bloodline flowed through her body like a gentle stream, warming up her frosty body and soul. I'm sorry, I didn't keep my promise. Her voice was imbued with boundless sorrow and remembrance, drawing tears from the listener's eyes. Lin and the others all burst into tears at the sight of Dongfang Ming's death. This was a true sorrow, as if their lover had passed away. It couldn't be helped, they were simply too immersed in the tragedy. Su Xiaolan clasped a hand over her heart as tears welled up in her eyes. Xiao Ming, why did you leave me? Lin wiped away his tears as his mind was filled with images of Dongfang Ming's smiling face. His domineering aura, his gentleness, his constant protectiveness, and the love that flowed through his veins unwittingly, all the way up until the moment of his death. All of these emotions erupted forth, and Lin was completely heartbroken. Wah, husband, how could you die? No, I want to die with you. Woof. Dabai's face was already covered in tears, and he looked as if he had nothing left to live for. Only the clown stood firmly on the spot, not crying or howling. He kept reminding himself that a love story that transcended species would never end well. However, what was with this ocean-like sadness? And what kind of liquid was flowing from his face? Shin Yin's voice gradually began to change. A certain conviction supported her forward as she embarked on the path of Tao once again. Her delicate body seemed to have been imbued with some kind of power, allowing her to forge ahead with all her might. She was several times more determined and desperate than she had been in the past. Xiao Ming, I'll definitely make good use of the power you left in my body. The Dragon King's enraged roar erupted from within the Dragon Court. Shin Yin, you've gone insane. How can the Tao of a phoenix and the Tao of a true dragon be combined? They're two completely different great Taos to begin with, and you'll die if you force them together. There are countless great Taos and there are no restrictions. Why can't I create a new Tao? A faint smile appeared on Shin Yin's face, but her voice was extremely firm. His power will fuse with mine, and we'll never be separated. On this day, heaven and earth tumbled as the ocean surged. Countless bolts of lightning fell over the East Sea, and the entire sky rumbled incessantly as flames erupted like scorching suns, threatening to evaporate the entire ocean. However, all of this disappeared amid a pained moan from the woman. Shen-Yin had failed her Tao integration stage on the East Sea, and her delicate body plummeted from the sky with a forlorn smile on her face. I still failed. I really don't know why I'm so stubborn. If only I had materialized the true Dragon Tao earlier. Shen-Yin was feeling a little self-deprecating, but for some reason, she didn't feel any remorse in her heart. All she felt was regret that she had failed her Tao integration stage. She had used a mystic technique to solidify her consciousness in order to delay her own death. She arrived at the place where she had first met Dongfang Ming. This was the plateau between the Heavenly River State and the Stone Dragon State. What should I call it? I met you in winter, and it was also winter when you left me. How about I call it the Winter Dragon Tomb? Shen-Yin had constructed a tomb for herself and sealed herself within the Divine Spirit Pillar, waiting for the fated person who could inherit her power. It had to be said that fate was a very strange thing sometimes. A beautiful woman had arrived at this dragon tomb. She possessed the bloodline of the true dragon and the divine phoenix. She had a bloodline connection with Shen-Yin, and she had received the approval of the dragon sparrow sword. Shen-Yin felt like if she and Dongfang Ming were to have a child, it would definitely be someone like Su Xiaolan. Her thousands of years of waiting had not been in vain. She had found someone who was both very surprising and very satisfying to her. The song drifted into the distance, and Shen-Yin's body began to fly toward the pillar of white light. There were 2 streams of tears running down her face, and she seemed to be able to see that dazzling figure again. The woman in the white dress gradually became illusionary, and her aura began to dissipate. The palace of heaven began to tremor as cracks began to appear on its walls. The space within the Winter Dragon Tomb also began to tremor as a series of web-like cracks began to appear. Enlin and the others came to their senses, and they finally realized that they couldn't stay here any longer as they looked on at the disappearing divine voice. Big Sister Shen-Yin. Su Xiaolan yelled as she ran toward Shen-Yin, only to be held back by Enlin. Run! We're going to die if we don't leave now. Enlin leaped onto his black brick with Su Xiaolan in tow before flying toward the exit with Dabai and Xiao Chou. Elder Fate heaved a faint sigh as he made his way toward the spatial gate of the tomb. The light emanating from the palace of heaven slowly dissipated, and the mystic realm that had existed for 8,000 years began to crumble at this moment, as if it was going to completely bury its past. How fortunate I am to have been able to spend 98 years with you in this life. Shen-Yin's voice was like the sound of nature, but it was drowned out by the spatial turbulence of the mystic realm. Chapter 261. On the plateau between the Heavenly River State and the Stone Dragon State, rainbow clouds hovered in the sky. A spatial gate glowing with a white light was gradually dimming, as if it was about to collapse at any moment. Hall Leader Su Tong and Deputy Hall Leader Su Yongnan stood nearby with their hands clasped behind their back. Behind them were 20 elite disciples from the Hall of Martial Arts. The Hall of Seven Sins was a mid-tier cultivation sect on the Darim Plateau. 2 days ago, when the disciples of the Hall of Seven Sins had witnessed the phenomenon, Su Tong had personally led the elites of the sect to this place. A phenomenon from the sky indicated that a rare treasure had appeared. The allure of a rare treasure was unimaginable, and the opportunities it represented were enough to shake the entire state. If the Hall of Seven Sins could obtain this rare treasure, they might be able to become a high-tier cultivation sect. Although they couldn't enter the spatial gate, they could wait for the person inside to bring out the rare treasure before setting up a trap for it. At this moment, the gate of light flashed, and an elderly man with white hair and a beard appeared before everyone's eyes. The elderly man glanced at everyone from the Hall of Seven Sins and couldn't even be bothered to say a word to them before flying away. For an old monster like him who had lived for close to 10,000 years, he couldn't even be bothered to talk to a bunch of juniors. Big Brother, another mighty figure that we can't see clearly has appeared. The cultivators who entered the mystic realm to search for treasures are probably not to be trifled with. Deputy Hall Leader Su Yongnan wiped the cold sweat off his forehead as he spoke with an uneasy expression. Su Yongnan and Su Tong were both soul formation initial stage cultivators. In the Kingdom of the Nine States, they could already be considered powerful cultivators. However, as they waited outside the spatial gate, they saw a few mighty figures of unfathomable power level emerge. All of these mighty figures were high and mighty, and they couldn't even be bothered to pay attention to them as they swaggered away. In this way, how weak could the cultivators who wandered in this secret realm be? Su Tong was clearly a little conflicted, but after a moment, a determined expression appeared on his face. Can't we just stand here and enjoy the scenery? This place is under the jurisdiction of the Hall of Seven Sins anyway, so who can stop us? If the cultivator who comes out is weaker than us, then we'll *CK him up. If the cultivator who comes out is stronger than us, then we'll pretend to enjoy the scenery. Su Yongnan knew that his big brother had already made up his mind, so he could only sigh lightly and fall silent. Rumble! The spatial gate moved again, and a black brick rushed out of it. On the black brick were a man and a woman, a monkey and a dog. Not long after they appeared, the spatial gate completely collapsed and turned into specks of light. This was the last batch of cultivators. Su Tong and Su Yongnan's expressions froze. A cultivator of the spirit-nurturing initial stage, a huge dog of the spirit-nurturing intermediate stage, a cultivator of the spirit-nurturing final stage, and a monkey of the half-step soul formation stage. Big brother, I didn't expect them to be so weak. Su Yongnan had initially thought that there would at least be one cultivator of the soul formation stage leading the team into the mystic realm. However, to his surprise, all of their cultivation bases were below the soul formation stage. This made Su Yongnan extremely tempted. Su Tong let out a cruel laugh. Looks like the heavens are helping our Hall of Seven Sins this time. Everyone, activate the Seven Sins formation and begin the encirclement. Unlin and the others had just exited the mystic realm on their brick, and were bathed in the radiant sunlight. Before they even had a chance to sigh with emotion, a huge spell formation suddenly appeared, enshrouding everyone within. Within the spell formation, flying swords flew through the air, vines lay dormant, icicles hung in the air, flaming dragons roared on the ground, and sand and pebbles flew through the air. Gusts of wind were like sharp blades, and lightning crackled in the sky. These represented the 7 different types of power: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning. Immediately afterward, a group of cultivators dressed in black robes appeared outside the spell formation. Their leader, Su Tong, laughed heartily as he joined his hands in salute. I am the leader of the Hall of Seven Sins, Su Tong. Congratulations on finding treasures in the mystic realm. Now, please hand over your treasures. Unlin's lips twitched. *CK, they were being robbed as soon as they left the mystic realm. How unlucky! He replied in a cold voice. What if we don't hand them over? Su Yongnan chuckled coldly. Hand over your treasures and I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. Oh? Kill me and take my treasures? Unlin was a little excited. After cultivating for so long, he had finally encountered something like this. Dabai also spoke up at this moment. Big Brother N, the Hall of Seven Sins is a mid-tier cultivation sect in the Stone Dragon State. It's a subsidiary power of the Great Sage Devil Sect. The Hall of Seven Sins loves to kill and rob others of their treasures. However, they are very discreet and difficult to track down. That's why they haven't been exterminated yet. Dubai's mythological beast sect was located in the Stone Dragon State, so he was quite familiar with the cultivation sects in the Stone Dragon State. Haha, I didn't expect a dog like you to know so much. But so what? You're trapped in the Seven Sins spell formation, so you should just obediently accept your deaths. Su Tong said with a smug expression. The Seven Sins spell formation was so powerful that it could even kill a soul formation stage cultivator. How could these cultivators who hadn't even reached the soul formation stage be able to resist it? A reminiscent expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she looked at the perilous spell formation. This is so similar to the situation that Shen Yin encountered. Will an extremely dazzling man appear here? And Lin's heart stirred upon hearing this, and he stepped forward. Don't worry, Xiaolan. There's no need for you to do anything. I'll take care of all the enemies on my own. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly as she looked at the man's back. A sweet feeling welled up in her heart. Wasn't he that dazzling man? The Hall of Seven Sins is an evil cultivation sect, so there's no need for us to hold back. They like to kill and rob others of their treasures, so there's definitely something in their storage rings. Let me tell you, the storage rings belong to whoever takes them, and you're not allowed to complain. And Lin's eyes lit up as he licked his lips. Xiao Chou and Dabai's eyes glowed with greed as they stared at the cultivators of the Hall of Seven Sins like hungry wolves. F***CK. They couldn't even get a single hair from the Winter Dragon tomb. How could they not be frustrated? The heavens must have taken pity on them to have sent a bunch of evil cultivators to kill and rob others of their treasures. He, the man, the monkey, and the dog all let loose unintelligible cackles. Su Xiaolan massaged her brows as her chest tightened. It seemed like she was celebrating too early. Who would have thought that Lin's image as a shining sun would crumble so quickly? A chill ran down Su Yongnan's spine as he looked at Lin and the others. Big brother, why do I feel like they're the hunters and we're the prey? Su Tong's heart trembled at the sight of Lin's sinister smile, but he still activated the spell formation with a frosty expression. What can a bunch of spirit-nurturing stage cultivators do? They're just putting up a front. I'm going to use the spell formation to kill them now. The Seven Sins formation finally began its slaughter as Su Tong let loose a light cry. 7 types of extremely powerful energy exploded forth, crashing down upon Lin and the others with devastating force. In the face of this overwhelming attack, Lin's eyes turned snowy white as he flicked his crimson realm-piercing nail toward a certain spot in the air. If Lin were to use his energy alone, then perhaps he would be pulverized by the devastating shockwaves of the spell formation. However, the realm-piercing nail was different. It was a formation-destroying, immortal tool to begin with, so it was virtually indestructible. The realm-piercing nail transformed into a crimson line that pierced through the tornado blades before puncturing the flaming dragon's body and striking a certain spot in the air. Before Su Tong and Su Yongnan's astonished eyes, the earth-shattering spell formation that was powerful enough to kill soul formation stage cultivators crumbled like a sandcastle in the face of a hurricane. Let's go! Lin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou all pounced toward the cultivators of the Hall of Seven Sins like ravenous wolves, giving the Hall of Seven Sins cultivators their worst nightmare. Chapter 262. The cultivators of the Hall of Seven Sins were all dumbstruck. Was this a joke? The most powerful spell formation of the Hall of Seven Sins had been broken just like that? After breaking through the Seven Slaughter formation with lightning speed, Lin immediately pounced toward Su Tong and Su Yongnan, clearly thinking that these two were the real fat sheep. The 3 of them charged toward the Hall of Seven Sins, and the cultivators of the Hall of Seven Sins finally came to their senses and prepared for battle. Humph! A mere spirit-nurturing initial stage cultivator dares to fight me? Su Tong felt like he had been underestimated, and he stepped forward as a black mist domain began to proliferate outward. The powerful aura of a soul formation initial stage cultivator completely erupted from his body. Gundam 1, Gundam 2, I'll leave these 2 fat sheep to you. The storage ring of the spirit-nurturing initial stage cultivator flashed as he spoke, and 2 silver puppets appeared out of thin air before pouncing toward Su Tong and Su Yongnan. You've overestimated yourselves. Su Tong's expression darkened as he unleashed a palm toward the silver puppet. A huge palm materialized from flames and slammed toward the Gundams. Within the huge palm of flames was a black mist that spread like a spider's web. The power of Een was imbued within the black mist, and even steel would be completely melted by the scorching heat and poisonous miasma. One of the Gundams gripped the air in its hand, and a blue light sword soared into the sky, unleashing a dazzling sword projection that easily sliced through the flaming palm. Furthermore, its momentum didn't diminish as it continued onward toward Su Tong's head. What? Su Tong's heart jolted in shock. He didn't think that the silver puppet would be able to parry his attack so easily. He hurriedly retreated, but to his surprise, the Gundam's blue sword projection also began to extend, leaving a trench of over 100 feet in length in the ground. The tip of the sword also slashed into his body, drawing a line of blood. Su Tong clasped a hand over his chest as he stared in shock at the silver puppet before him. He seemed to have realized what An Lin's smile entailed. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted from nearby. Su Tong turned to find Su Yongnan standing not far away. His Wind King armor had been shattered by a single punch from the other Gundam, and the monstrous force behind the punch even sent the ground flying. Su Yongnan, who was also an early-stage soul formation cultivator, was sent flying like a kite with its string cut. The 20 elite cultivators of the Hall of Seven Sins had also completely switched roles. They were being slaughtered by the 3 hungry wolves, An Lin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou. An Lin unfurled his wings of wind. With his terrifying speed, he killed with every step he took. The first step, An Lin unleashed his mountain-quaking golden fist, instantly killing a 10th stage Dao Body Hall of Seven Sins disciple. The second step, An Lin condensed a crimson feather of flames into an arrow, which instantly pierced through a spirit-nurturing intermediate stage elder. The elder's body instantly melted under the terrifying heat of the arrow. The third step, An Lin unsheathed his evil-slaying sword, and his body flashed toward an elder of the spirit-nurturing initial stage. A pitch-black sword projection slashed out, slicing the elder's magic long sword and body in half. The fourth step, with every step An Lin took, he killed a person. All of the elite cultivators of the Hall of Seven Sins trembled in fear. Xiao Chou was even more desperate than him. His half-step soul formation stage power was completely unleashed, and his silver staff was like a crushing mountain crashing down. None of the cultivators were a match for him. Dabai was also very diligent. However, he usually chose to kill cultivators of the Dao Body stage or spirit-nurturing initial stage. This way, he could finish the battle faster and had a better price-performance ratio. Almost every time they killed someone, they would do the same thing. That was to take their storage ring. That's right, even in such a chaotic and dangerous battle, the first thing they did after killing an enemy was not to continue fighting other enemies. Instead, they would pick up their equipment. Su Tong saw that Xiao Chou was willing to take a beating from the cultivators behind him in order to take the storage rings and weapons of the cultivators he had just defeated. At that moment, he finally understood what kind of situation his Hall of Seven Sins was in. In the eyes of An Lin and the others, they weren't even enemies. Instead, they were a bunch of moving treasure vaults. Retreat. Su Tong realized that the roles of hunter and prey had been reversed, and he immediately made the decision to retreat. The cultivators of the Hall of Seven Sins had wanted to escape a long time ago. In the past, it was always them who killed and looted, but who would have thought that there would be 3 cultivators who were even more ferocious than them this time? They would split the spoils of war after killing their targets, but An Lin and the others were like robbers. After killing a target, they would immediately loot their storage rings and weapons. It was as if they wanted nothing more than to strip off their enemies' clothes. What a terrifying sight! You want to run? No way. An Lin spread open his wings of wind and unleashed the wind sword of the 6 strikes of the war god. A white streak of light revolved around his evil-slaying sword. The wings of wind and the wind sword allowed his speed to break through 3 times the speed of sound in an instant. Clouds of sonic booms appeared wherever his body passed. The white sword light flashed like a clap of thunder, instantly killing 3 elite cultivators. The remaining cultivators were scared witless by this terrifying sword projection, and they ran even faster. Split up. The remaining 4 cultivators fled in different directions. Enlin had just unleashed the wind sword and his aura was a little unstable, so he didn't have the energy to give chase. One of the cultivators was being chased by Xiao Chou, while the other was being chased by Dabai. The other 2 cultivators were ecstatic upon seeing this. They knew that they were the lucky ones, and they ran even faster. Unexpectedly, when one of the cultivators raised his head, he was greeted by a flaming sword projection that pierced through the air. The cultivator's pupils contracted, but as expected of an elder of the spirit-nurturing intermediate stage, his reactions were extremely quick, and he instantly conjured up 3 ice walls in front of him. However, this sword projection was imbued with terrifying heat, and even the air around it began to twist and warp. The 3 ice walls had already begun to melt before the sword projection even came into contact with the ice walls. Impossible! The cultivator's eyes widened, and he only had time to let out a cry of surprise before his entire body was engulfed in flames. A woman in a green dress spread open her flaming wings, and she flew through the air like a phoenix, leaving lightning in her wake. She flipped her pristine, jade-like hand lightly, and her storage ring fell into her palm. Then, she flew toward the last cultivator without any hesitation. Su Xiaolan had made her move. With her spirit-nurturing final stage cultivation base combined with her true dragon and divine phoenix bloodlines, her power had reached an astonishing level. She was virtually invincible among cultivators of the same rank. An expression of despair appeared on the face of Su Xiaolan, who was flying at supersonic speeds. Never would he have thought that their ambush would turn the tables on them. More importantly, they didn't even have a chance to escape. Vice Hall leader Su Yongnan was roasted by the dark purple dragon flames of one of the Gundams. Hall leader Su Tong tried his best to escape, but he was blasted to death by over 100 spirit snake tracking missiles. The battle concluded quickly, and the Hall of 7 Sins was completely wiped out. However, to Enlin and the others, the result wasn't important. What was important was how many good things were in their storage rings. Enlin was the biggest winner, and he received 10 storage rings, including Su Tong and Su Yongnan's. The clown received 7 storage rings, Dabai received 3, and Su Xiaolan received 2 storage rings. Su Xiaolan didn't plan to attack initially, but killing all of her enemies was the safest way to deal with the situation. Thus, she killed the 2 cultivators who had a chance of escaping. She saw that Dabai had received the least storage rings, and he looked quite pitiful, so she gave the 2 storage rings in her hand to Dabai. Thus, Enlin had 10 storage rings, the clown had 7, and Dabai had 5. The gap between the rich and the poor had shrunk even further, and Dabai felt a sense of balance in his heart. Now it was time to open all the treasures. Chapter 263. Enlin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou all looked at the storage rings in their hands with nervous expressions. It was as if everyone had a few lottery tickets that were guaranteed to win, but they didn't know what they would get. Who's first? Enlin turned to Xiao Chou and Dabai. Xiao Chou and Dabai turned to Enlin. Enlin shrugged. All right, I'll go first. He hovered the 10 storage rings in midair before refining them one by one. He then picked out the 8 storage rings from the elite cultivators of the Hall of 7 Sins. After all, the best storage rings were always reserved for the finale. He pulled out everything from the first storage ring. Clatter, clatter. He poured out a pile of things, which piled up into a small mountain, causing everyone's eyes to light up. 35,000 spirit stones, 3 intermediate rank magic tools, 1 advanced rank magic tool, 5 spirit medicines, and a few random pills and tool refinement materials. It was already a pleasant surprise that there were so many items in one storage ring. The cultivators of the Hall of Seven Sins really were rich. Immediately afterward, Unlin opened up the remaining 7 storage rings to find that the items in them were about the same as those in the first storage ring. There was even an elementary rank spirit tool in one of the storage rings, which was quite a pleasant surprise. After opening up the 8 storage rings, it was time for the main event, which was Su Tong and Su Yongnan's storage rings. Unlin opened up Su Yongnan's storage ring first. After refining the storage ring, he poured out all of its content. Clatter, clatter, everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. The treasures piled up like a small mountain. Unlin chuckled. What evil capitalism! The difference between the treasures and the disciples of the elders is so great. 310,000 spirit stones, 2 elementary rank spirit tools, 1 intermediate rank spirit tool, a dozen or so spirit pills, and many spirit plants and earthly treasures. Just the value of the items in this storage ring alone was comparable to the total value of the previous 8 storage rings. Xiao Chou and Dabai's eyes were bloodshot with envy upon seeing this. F***ck, this difference was infuriating. Next up was Su Tong's storage ring, which was just as astonishing. 350,000 spirit stones, 2 intermediate rank spirit tools, spirit pills, and many spirit plants and earthly treasures, as well as a 9th grade immortal pill, Azure Yang pill. This was something that Unlin had only discovered after using his divine inspection technique. It was extremely effective and could be considered as a miraculous healing medicine. From this battle, Unlin obtained 950,000 spirit stones, 3 intermediate rank spirit tools, several dozen spirit pills, countless spirit plants and earthly treasures, as well as a 9th grade immortal pill. Unlin's heart was filled with relief, and he gave all of his aphrodisiac pills to Dabai. Next, Unlin opened up Xiao and He, Dabai, Lin, and Xiao Lin, Yi Shin, Xiao and Chou. Lin, Fan, and. After that, the clown opened 7 storage rings and obtained over 200,000 spirit stones, as well as countless rare materials and earthly treasures, spirit pills, and miraculous medicines. He had made a killing. Dabai also eagerly opened up 5 storage rings. There were close to 200,000 spirit stones, as well as many valuable spirit plants and earthly treasures, as well as a large number of immortal pills. His emotions were quite stable at the moment. The spoils of war from this battle have finally soothed our wounded hearts. Unlin looked up into the sky with a blissful smile on his face. Dabai and Xiao Chou nodded in agreement. This was already a very satisfying haul. Hey, you guys all have storage rings to play with. I want one too. I haven't had a chance to take a closer look at the storage ring that big sister Shen Yin gave me. Su Xiaolan's interest had clearly been piqued by Unlin and the others, and she stroked the intricate ring on her finger with a dainty smile. Unlin and the others were shocked to hear this, and they immediately raised their hands and yelled, "No!" However, it was too late. The storage rings flashed, and all of the treasures were flung out. Then an earthquake struck. Boom! The ground tremored violently, and everyone's mouths gaped open at the sight of the mountainous pile of items before them. Holy F***ck. So many! Unlin was dumbstruck. The items before him were piled up like a layered cake. The green spirit stones were the base of the mountain, and there were several million of them. The middle layer was filled with all types of tool refinement materials, all of which were exuding extremely powerful energy fluctuations. The middle layer was filled with all types of rare spirit plants, spirit fruits, and immortal fruit. The top layer was filled with all types of spirit pills and immortal pills, as well as many unknown weapons. The entire cake was extremely dazzling under the light of the sun, and it was a breathtaking sight. Su Xiaolan stuck out her tongue and smacked her lips with a slightly embarrassed expression. There seems to be quite a lot. How about you help me count them? Unlin's lips twitched. This feeling of counting money for someone else was quite depressing, especially when it was piled up like a mountain. It was both tiring and depressing. Dabai and Xiao Chou had finally found some comfort and self-esteem, but they were instantly crushed by this mountainous pile of treasures, and they felt a little suffocated. As expected, Su Xiaolan was the biggest winner of this trip. The spirit stones were all the same, so Lin could roughly estimate how many there were after scanning the pile with his divine sense. 7 million spirit stones. Lin didn't know how to count the tool refinement materials and rare spirit plants either. He used his divine inspection technique to appraise the items, but he was only able to come up with some indescribable names and characteristics. They were all ancient items, and he didn't know how much they were worth, so he decided to calculate them in kilograms. 38 spirit fruits, 10 immortal fruits, 220 spirit pills, 7 immortal pills, 39 spirit tools, and 1 immortal tool. What was worth mentioning was that the immortal tool was called the Divine Flame Bead, and it seemed to be an artifact left behind by Dongfang Ming. After making an inventory of these treasures, Lin felt like his heart couldn't take it anymore. He had initially thought that he was a nouveau riche, but it looked like Su Xiaolan was the true overnight millionaire, and Lin couldn't help but turn his gaze toward the beautiful woman before him. She seemed to be very happy, and her smile was extremely beautiful and enchanting. She was most likely aware that she was already filthy rich. Whoever married her would be living off a woman to death. Su Xiaolan clapped her hands together as she looked at the sorted treasures. All right, let's distribute the treasures now. Lin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou all turned to Su Xiaolan with confusion on their faces. What? If it weren't for your help, how would I have been able to obtain the inheritance and all these treasures? So, it's time for me to give back to you. Su Xiaolan's smile was genuine, but her expression was extremely determined, as if she had already made up her mind. Lin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou all shuddered upon hearing this. They didn't think that Su Xiaolan would suddenly do something like this. She looked at the mountain of spirit stones and stroked her chin as she murmured to herself, I'm not in urgent need of spirit stones. Lin, you still owe Chang a big favor, so you can have all 7 million spirit stones. Lin, Dabai, and Xiao Chou were all rooted to the spot as if they had been struck by lightning upon hearing this from Su Xiaolan. You're giving me all of it? Are you kidding me? Even someone as thick-skinned as Lin couldn't help but stutter incoherently. This wasn't just a few hundred or 10,000 spirit stones, it was 7 million spirit stones. This was a fortune comparable to that of a large immortal sect, but Su Xiaolan was giving it all to him just like that? And she was giving it all away. No, you can't give me all of these spirit stones. Before Su Xiaolan had a chance to reply, Lin shook his head in refusal. The treasures in the storage ring were given to Su Xiaolan by Shen Yin. No matter how thick-skinned Lin was, he couldn't just accept all of these spirit stones. Su Xiaolan's expression froze slightly. I don't want you to owe Chang a favor for so long, so just take it. I don't lack spirit stones, so what's wrong with you taking my spirit stones to repay your debt? If you don't accept it, then you're not acknowledging me as a friend. Lin was given a fright upon hearing this. All right, I'll accept it. He stowed all 7 million spirit stones into the storage ring, and he was so touched that he was about to burst into tears. She was still trying to repay his debt at a time like this. How did he have such a good friend, including Su Xiaolan's spirit stones? He had a total of 14 million spirit stones in his storage ring, which was more than enough to pay for Chang Yi's immortal pill. Su Xiaolan's expression eased slightly upon seeing Lin accept the spirit stones, and she turned her gaze toward Dabai. Dabai, you have the bloodline of the heavenly wolf and your primary cultivation is the Tao of wind, so you can have these 2 wind-eye immortal fruit. Also, this divine essence condensing immortal pill can not only make your wolf-type vital energy seem more boundless, but it can also help you break through to the spirit-nurturing final stage, so you can have it as well. Su Xiaolan immediately gave Enlin the most valuable immortal fruits and immortal pills she had, and she was not stingy in the slightest. After accepting the immortal pills, Dabai tearfully expressed his desire to follow Su Xiaolan. To put it simply, he didn't want to follow Enlin anymore, and he wanted to become Su Xiaolan's beast pet. After all, Enlin only gave him the aphrodisiac pill, but Su Xiaolan gave him the best, of course. This was impossible as the divorce contract required both parties to agree. Hence, Dabai suffered another beating from Enlin. Finally, it was Xiao Chao's turn. Su Xiaolan looked at Xiao Chou with a troubled expression. What should she give him? Xiao Chou was already at the half-step soul formation stage and specialized in the cultivation of his body and fire-type powers. There didn't seem to be any immortal pills or immortal fruits in her storage ring that were suitable for Xiao Chou. Should she give him the immortal tool, the divine flame bead? Su Xiaolan brought out the divine flame bead, but Xiao Chou refused to accept it no matter what. That was the most valuable item in her storage ring, and he was too embarrassed to accept it. Su Xiaolan sheepishly put away the divine flame bead and continued to struggle with her dilemma. Chapter 264. Su Xiaolan stared at Xiao Chao's bulb-like eyes, sunken nose and crooked mouth, and she felt like her eyes were burning. Her heart stirred, and she immediately had an idea. Her storage ring flashed, and a mask constructed from divine azure stone appeared in her hand. This mask is known as the Azure Battle Luo Mask. It's exquisitely crafted and will naturally absorb the vital energy of heaven and earth. After wearing it, it can instantly release the vital energy stored within the mask, granting you immense power for a short period of time. It's a high-rank spirit tool. Most importantly, it's extremely handsome. Xiao Chao's expression finally changed at the sight of the mask in Su Xiaolan's hands, and he accepted the mask with trembling hands. This was an extremely precious gift, but it was also very suitable for him. Su Xiaolan's gratitude was genuine and sincere this time. She had given away the best things that everyone could use, so how could Enlin and the others not understand her intentions? Even so, Su Xiaolan still felt like something was missing. She furrowed her beautiful brows and murmured to herself, "I feel like I've forgotten about someone." Enlin heard Su Xiaolan's words and immediately said, "My Dabai clown has already received a gift, who else could I forget? Don't think too much about it, let's go eat something delicious." Su Xiaolan couldn't think of who it was, so she could only nod with a smile and fly with Enlin toward the prefectural city of the Heavenly River State. At the prefectural city of the Heavenly River State, at the Immortal Pearl Pavilion, everyone had a truly luxurious feast here, spending over 60,000 spirit stones on the entire meal. The main course of this extravagant feast was no ordinary food. Instead, it was made from all types of precious ingredients and rare mutant beasts, all of which were meticulously prepared by top-notch immortal chefs. Not only were all the dishes extremely fragrant, but they were also imbued with rich energy. It could be said that they were truly delicious and could also enhance one's physique. Even the sect leaders of large celestial sects did not dare to eat and drink at the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. After all, the things they ate were all valuable treasures. However, Enlin and the others served a table full of dishes. They ate like wolves and tigers. After finishing one table, they called for another to be served. This action made the other tycoons in the Celestial Treasure Pavilion sweat. They had never seen someone who could eat so much, and they had never seen someone who could spend so much money. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, not only did everyone clear away the fatigue from the continuous battles in the dragon's tomb, their bodies were also filled to the brim, as if they had inexhaustible strength. Taking advantage of this good mood, everyone leisurely returned to the celestial court. 2 days later, Xiaoxian United University held its annual conference. The second-year students received a collective commendation for the battle against the ant tribe. The students and teachers who participated in the decapitation operation received generous reward. However, Enlin didn't care much about these things. After that, it was time for the students' graduation ceremony. Wang Xuanzhan gave a speech to the entire university as the representative of the graduating students. And Lin looked at the domineering man on the stage and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Time really flew by. Who would have thought that even he would be graduating soon? Wang Xuanzhan and Lin could be considered friends. This was a friendship that had been nurtured during the Tao Exchange Conference of the Four Powers. And Lin was quite dejected that such a reliable person was leaving. After the speech, Wang Xuanzhan also came over to bid farewell to Lin. The two of them walked along the campus path, attracting the attention of many students. After all, one was the #1 student on the Heavens roll, while the other was the legend of the school. Senior Wang, are you really going to the Wind Plain State? I heard that the executive department of the Celestial Court in the Wind Plain State is constantly embroiled in war. It's very dangerous. And Lin couldn't help but feel a little worried when he heard that Wang Xuanzhan had decided to join the executive department of the Celestial Court in the Wind Plain State. The Wind Plain State and the Holy Glacial Lands were neighbors, and wars frequently broke out there. Although the beautiful snow maidens weren't to be underestimated, the Wind Plain State was extremely ruthless and powerful. In fact, they were even more powerful than the Blood Tribe in the southwest. The Wind Plain State was the place where the wars in the Kingdom of the Nine States were the most intense. It was also the most dangerous executive department of the Celestial Court. A carefree smile appeared on Wang Xuanzhan's chiseled face. I, Wang Xuanzhan, have never feared battle. It's exactly because of the incessant wars there that I chose to go there. Only battle can make me stronger. He then continued in a mysterious voice, besides, guess who I met there? And Lin blinked. Chun. Wang Xuanzhan's expression shifted. Huh? How did you know? Aside from Chen, who else could pique your interest? And Lin looked at Wang Xuanzhan with a hint of a smile on his face. Wang Xuanzhan chuckled awkwardly. I've been in countless battles since I was born, but there are only two that have left a deep impression on me. One of them was with you, and the other was with him. I lost to you in our first battle, and I accepted that defeat wholeheartedly. After all, you were able to crack open the earth with a single finger, and I was completely unable to block that attack. However, in my battle with Chen, I didn't even dare to move his finger, but I was already intimidated by his aura. Cowering before a battle is the greatest humiliation of my life. I'm going to find him and fight him fair and square. Even if I lose, I'm going to fight until I'm completely defeated. And Lin was a little curious. Then when you met Chen at the Holy Glacial Lands last time, didn't you fight him? Wang Xuanzhan shook his head. We didn't fight. He ran away. And Lin, however, before he ran away, he wanted me to pass on a message to you, Wang Xuanzhan suddenly said. Pass on a message to me? And Lin's eyes widened in shock. Wang Xuanzhan nodded with a peculiar expression. He said that not only does he know the finger of the Heavenly Tao, but he also knows the fist of the Heavenly Tao, the kick of the Heavenly Tao, and the sword of the Heavenly Tao. If you want to learn them, you can go to the Holy Glacial Lands to find him. He can teach you, Lin. Excuse me. Lin didn't know how to express his current feelings. Kick of the Heavenly Tao? Why not a fart of the Heavenly Tao? Those techniques were special products of the Heavenly Tao. Although they did sound very bad *SS. His body shuddered at the thought of how he had self-detonated after unleashing the finger of the Heavenly Tao, and he instinctively wanted to refuse. Why did Chen say he could teach him? Chen wasn't surprised that Lin was able to learn such a bad *SS technique so quickly. There had to be a big secret behind this, but he didn't really want to know. He had a nagging feeling that it would be very dangerous to do so. Forget it. I'll think about it some other time. And Lin shook his head to rid himself of these thoughts. The most important thing right now was to improve his own strength. Only when he was powerful enough would he be able to solve any problem. When that time came, who cared if it was the fist of the heavenly Tao or the kick of the heavenly Tao? He could *ck the heavens. After bidding farewell to Wang Xuanzhan, he returned to his residence and swallowed a vital energy pill before immediately beginning his cultivation. The vital energy pill was a 9th-grade spirit pill. After consuming this pill, it would greatly increase the speed at which he refined his core through meditation. Although it was quite expensive and only lasted for 2 days, he didn't care. He had money. Tycoons should have their own cultivation method. Enlin was very much in agreement with this. 2 days later, Enlin emerged from seclusion. Taking advantage of the fact that the school was officially on holiday, he went to find Su Qianyun. He could finally repay his debt to Chang Yi. Chapter 265. Su Qianyun was about to head home when she saw the man riding on his dog. "Classmate Enlin, why are you here?" A peculiar light flashed through Su Qianyun's bright blue eyes as she spoke in her mellow voice. Enlin landed beside Su Qianyun on his dog with a smile. "I'm here to repay my debt." "Repay your debt?" Su Qianyun blinked. She suddenly clapped her hands together and came to a realization. Classmate Enlin wants to repay that 2nd-grade immortal pill? Big Sister Chang, he didn't ask you to pay for that immortal pill. Even if you want to repay this favor, you have to raise enough money first. It's too troublesome to only raise money for a year or 2 and then pay back a small portion. There's no need for that. Enlin scratched his head. But I think I've raised enough. Su Qianyun smiled faintly and explained patiently, "It's not as simple as you think. This type of immortal pill isn't something that can be bought with just a few 100,000 spirit stones. Don't say that I'm scaring you, but pills like the Ultimate Creation Pill, which is almost comparable to a 1st-grade immortal pill, need at least tens of millions of spirit stones." Su Qianyun knew that Enlin had earned a lot of money in the past 2 years. She estimated that he had at least 1,000,000 spirit stones, which was an astronomical sum for normal cultivators. However, this amount of money was far from enough to repay that immortal pill. Taking money out like this would incur Chang Yi's disgust. She was worried that Enlin would feel too pressured after hearing the price of the immortal pill, so she comforted him in a gentle voice. "Classmate Enlin, take your time to raise the money. Big Sister Chang, you really won't mind if you pay it back later." Enlin stroked his chin. 14. 8,000,000 spirit stones aren't enough either? 14. 8,000,000 spirit stones aren't enough either. Su Qianyun's voice trailed off mid-sentence. She raised her head and asked in disbelief, "You have 14. 8,000,000 spirit stones?" "Yeah, I had some miraculous encounters, hee." Enlin replied shyly. Su Qianyun was shocked speechless. What kind of fortuitous encounter could earn more than 14,000,000 spirit stones in less than 2 years? Even though she was a member of the royal family and was used to seeing all kinds of riches and honor, she still found it unbelievable. After all, this amount of money was an extremely huge amount of wealth even for celestial immortals of the Void Return realm. Yet, Enlin was actually able to gather so much money in 2 years. This was too crazy. Su Qianyun did her best to calm her emotions. Her beautiful eyes stared at Enlin. When she saw that he did not seem to be joking, she finally nodded seriously. "All right, I'll take you to the Moon Palace." On a vast and boundless silver continent, there were osmanthus trees that swayed like the sea. The fragrance of the osmanthus wafted for 10 li, refreshing the mind. If a mortal were to inhale the fragrance of the osmanthus flowers that were imbued with the power of extreme Yin, they would be able to extend their lifespan by 10 years. Enlin rode on Dabai and followed Su Qianyun through the forest of osmanthus trees before arriving at an extremely grand and tall palace. The palace exuded a pristine white light, giving it a holy and tranquil appearance. There was a sign at the entrance that read, "Men and dogs not allowed." An apologetic expression appeared on Su Qianyun's face as she turned to Dabai. "Dabai, the Moon Palace has its own rules. You can wait at the entrance for now. Unlin laughed heartily as he leaped off Dabai and stroked its head. It's a pity that dogs aren't allowed in. Go play on the side. Dabai's eyes widened. What a shock. Men and dogs aren't allowed in. Unlin is allowed in? What does this mean, Wolf? Unlin. He didn't expect to be bitten back when he teased Dabai. It looked like he had to teach Dabai a lesson when he got back. When Su Qianyun heard Dabai's words, a blush appeared on her delicate face as she said in a soft voice, Unlin, that's not what I meant. You're still a man. I'm making an exception to let you in. Unlin's lips twitched slightly. Do I have to explain so seriously that I'm still a man? Student Su, you're too naive. Following that, Su Qianyun began to drag Unlin into the Moon Palace's territory. Unlin saw many maidservants with veils on their faces fluttering in the wind. When they saw Su Qianyun, they would bow respectfully. It was clear that Su Qianyun's status in the Moon Palace was not low. When they saw Unlin, their eyes were filled with curiosity. In particular, when they saw Unlin's Adam's apple bulge, their eyes lit up with excitement. Unlin was very familiar with this type of expression. It was the same expression he had when he went to the zoo to look at the giant pandas. The two of them slowly made their way up the stairs. The Moon Palace had a total of 9 levels, and Chang-Yi lived on the top level. Shouldn't we get someone to announce our arrival? Unlin was a little nervous. Su Qianyun shook her head. There's no need. Big Sister Chang-Yi was already aware of your arrival the moment you stepped into the Moon Palace. She didn't stop you, which means that you've already been granted permission to meet her. Unlin nodded. He would be lying if he said he wasn't nervous about meeting such a mighty figure. One title after another resounded in his ears, such as the #1 Pill Refinement Master of the Kingdom of the 9 States, the #1 Landlord of the Celestial Court, the #1 Beauty of the Celestial Court, a mighty figure at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. All of these titles gave Unlin a lot of pressure. After arriving on the 8th level, a voice that he would often hear in his nightmares suddenly sounded. Su Qianyun, why did you bring a man here? Wow. Isn't this idiot N? Unlin's chest constricted upon hearing this. Idiot and my A**s. He turned to look into the room, and sure enough, he was greeted by the sight of a pristine white rabbit. This rabbit was half as tall as a grown man, and it leaped over to Unlin with a pair of glowing, ruby-like eyes as it stared at the man before it. It was holding a jade pestle that was used to pound medicine. Little you, how could you say that about classmate Unlin? Su Qianyun was a little displeased. You too, harumph. Su Qianyun, if you really don't believe me, I'll give idiot an intelligence test right now. Then you'll know. Unlin's legs instantly gave out upon hearing this. He recalled the horror of being knocked unconscious by the jade pestle over and over again. Hey! Stop it, little you. Classmate Unlin is here to repay his debt. Su Qianyun pouted as she glared at you two with her bright blue eyes. Even though she was angry, she was still extremely adorable. You two's eyes lit up with excitement. Repay his debt? You're going to descend into the mortal world again? I've just about run out of snacks this time. Dried carrots aren't very tasty, so you can buy 80 kilograms. Give me 20 boxes of carrot-flavored chips and 3 tons of freshly squeezed carrot-flavored fries. Hey, that's not it. He earned a lot of spirit stones this time and wants to repay Big Sister Chang-Yi for the pill refinement fees, Su Qianyun hurriedly explained. Earned a lot of spirit stones? Yu Tu's ears drooped in disappointment upon hearing this. She looked up at Unlin and raised the jade pestle in her hand. How many spirit stones have you earned? Unlin's heart tightened at the sight of the jade pestle in Yu Tu's hand. 14.8 million. Clang. The jade pestle in Yu Tu's hand fell to the ground as she glared at Unlin. 14.8 million spirit stones? Do you think I'm an idiot? How is that possible? Unlin had no choice but to release the spatial projection of his storage ring for U2 to see. U2's body trembled at the sight of the mountain of spirit stones and vital stones. Are you robbing the imperial family? No, there's so much money here. You're robbing the imperial family. That doesn't make sense. How could you do that? There's no way to explain this. Fortune favors fools. Unlin was enraged by U2's accusation that he was an idiot, and he waved a sleeve through the air. Do you really think a bunch of trash like you can fathom the power of I, Unlin? Wah! You're flexing in front of me. U2 let loose a strange cry as she swung the jade pestle in her hand through the air. Bam! The jade pestle had a dizzying effect, and Unlin was caught off guard as the top of his head was struck, and his vision immediately rolled over into the back of his head. Chapter 266. Thankfully, U2 had held back a little, and Unlin's vision merely darkened, but he didn't completely faint from the impact. Su Qianyun hurriedly rushed over to support Unlin before glaring hatefully at U2's day. U2 harumphed in response, as if this was only natural. It had been a long time since a man had come to the Moon Palace, so she naturally had to teach him a lesson. Seeing as you've taken the initiative to return the money, then come with me to see Big Sister Chang'e. U2 glanced at Unlin, who had already regained consciousness, before turning to lead the way. However, I have to remind you that the palace mistress has been in a very bad mood recently, so you have to be careful with your words and actions. If you make her unhappy, I won't be able to save you. U2 turned to Unlin with a warning after taking a few steps. Unlin nodded with a solemn expression upon hearing this. He was only here to return the money, so all he had to do was behave. On the 9th level of the Moon Palace, one had a panoramic view of the entire Moonland. After making their way around the ancient landscape painting, a clear figure appeared in their field of vision. Unlin caught sight of the woman who was reputed to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Her white dress danced in the gentle breeze, and she was like a lotus flower blooming on a cold night. Her slender body was leaning against a chair, and her slender, lily-white hands were supporting her chin with a languid expression on her face. Her limpid eyes were looking elsewhere, as if she were thinking about something. Chang'e's beauty was even more stunning than Su Qianyun's. She was truly mesmerizing and captivating, as if she were a goddess from above the heavens. Unlin had seen all kinds of goddesses in his life, so he had developed some resistance to them. However, when he saw that flawless face, he was still rooted to the spot and forgot to speak. Big Sister Chang'e, classmate Unlin, has collected a lot of spirit stones recently. I brought them here to repay you for saving his life that day, Su Qianyun said with a smile. Unlin came back to his senses and said respectfully, Junior Unlin, thank you for your help. As of now, this junior has already gathered a lot of spirit stones to express my gratitude. I hope you can accept them. The stars change, and the years pass by. I still can't understand the colors of this world. Chang'e's cold voice rang out. Her clear eyes reflected the deep and vast starry sky as she shook her head slightly. Unlin blinked his eyes. What did she say? Unlin was a little confused. He didn't know if Chang'e heard what he said. What should he do next? Did he need to repeat it again? What Big Sister Chang'e means is that she has been bored for a long time, Su Qianyun explained to Unlin through telepathy. Unlin suddenly understood. He felt that the words of an expert were indeed different. Those who didn't have a certain level of skill wouldn't be able to understand. Then, as if he had found a life-saving straw, he immediately transmitted his voice to Su Qianyun. Then she didn't seem to answer my question about the spirit stones. What should I do? Big Sister Chang'e is obviously troubled by that question, so she's not in the mood to pay attention to your debt. We can coax her and mention it again when she's happy. Su Qianyun transmitted her voice. Unlin's mouth twitched. Coax Chang'e? He didn't even know how to coax his pet beast when it was throwing a tantrum, let alone a complete stranger. Big Sister Chang-yi, what's bothering you lately? You can tell Su Qianyun. Su Qianyun was the first to attack. She made her way over to Chang-yi's side with a bright smile on her face. Chang-yi finally withdrew her gaze and looked at Su Qianyun, who was just as beautiful as her. She sighed softly and said with melancholy, "Thoughts are like the spring grass, the further they go, the more they grow." And Lin was at a loss. He couldn't help but transmit his voice to Su Qianyun. What does Chang-yi mean by that? She said that when she's bored it's easy to overthink, like the endless spring grass. I think she might be a little depressed. Let me talk to her, Su Qianyun replied. And Lin nodded solemnly and stood quietly to the side. A conversation of this caliber wasn't something an uncouth old man like him could participate in. Su Qianyun and Chang-yi chatted with one another. And Lin couldn't understand a single word Chang-yi was saying, so Su Qianyun was probably the only one who could converse with her so smoothly. You two crouched down beside An Lin with her jade pestle in her arms and stared at Chang-yi with wide eyes. An Lin could see that you two was also a little confused, and he transmitted his voice to her. Little you, do you understand what Senior Chang-yi is saying? You two shuddered upon hearing this. Is little you something that an idiot like An Lin can call? I'm getting goosebumps. An Lin. After scolding An Lin, you two continued, Palace Mistress only speaks like this when she's suffering from hipster syndrome. Only Su Qianyun can communicate with her in this state. Hipster syndrome? An Lin took a deep breath as his eyes lit up, and it was as if everything had suddenly become clear to him. He had initially wondered if there really was something wrong with his IQ, and he wanted to take a mental test. However, even you two couldn't understand what he was saying, which meant that there was something wrong with Chang-yi. With that in mind, An Lin felt a lot better, and he was also struck by a sense of humor as he listened to the conversation between the two hipster celestial maidens. Flowers fall in a deep ravine, but no one asks. I've experienced countless reincarnations in the mortal world. I live alone in the palace and the weather is cold. Big Sister Chang-yi, I'll always be with you, and little you is also here, so I won't allow you to say that. Lost, indecisive, hee. Once I become a celestial immortal, I'll come to the Moon Palace and become a Vice Palace Mistress. That way, I'll be able to always be by your side. The more An Lin listened, the more he admired Su Qianyun. She was still able to chat cheerfully with Chang-yi even in this state, and this showed just how powerful her comprehension ability was. Su Qianyun had already transformed from a little girl who didn't have any talent for languages, and couldn't even learn English and Chinese well. She had transformed into a language master that even her teacher, An Lin, had to look up to. An Lin even had the illusion that the beautiful and pure Su Qianyun was Chang-yi's big sister. She was patiently guiding this crazy little sister of hers. Amorous only has the moon in the courtyard of spring, like a dreamer who shines on the falling flowers. I'm like the distant moon, watching the flowers in my dreams. After Chang-yi finished speaking, a faint look of sorrow appeared on her face, and it was especially pitiful. When An Lin saw this, he couldn't help but want to hug her in his arms. Of course, life was so beautiful, An Lin wouldn't court death like this. After hearing this, Su Qianyun was stunned, and then she said in surprise, You really think so? Chang-yi nodded and then shook her head. This was the first time An Lin saw such a surprised look on Su Qianyun's face, and he couldn't help but ask curiously, What did Chang-yi say just now? Su Qianyun replied with a solemn expression, Big Sister Chang-yi says that she's too perfect. She has many suitors, but they're all people with ulterior motives, so it's very difficult to find a sincere suitor. She herself doesn't have anyone she truly likes either. She felt a little lonely, and she also said that she wanted to fall in love.